Chapter 241 Zepha leaves. Ha ha ha, I didn't expect it. Who Hansen, back. Looking at the familiar prison in front of him, Loya couldn't help but be arrogant and said loudly. Stop talking nonsense, go in when you come back. Let's go. The speaker is Garp, who was a poisonous milkman and acted as an accomplice in disguise. This time, he took the initiative to apply to Sengoku to lock Loya in himself. While talking, Garp kicked Loya's ass with a big foot and kicked him into the cell. Locking Loya into the cell again, Garp, who has always been out of control, was rarely vigilant at this time. He looked around the cell and wandered around with his knowledge. And Loya was there watching Garp perform so quietly. What's so beautiful around here? That's it, just repaired the damaged position and replaced the broken railing. And even if all the walls were replaced with solid seafloor stones, he still had a way to leave. Garp's vigilance at this moment is completely meaningless and necessary, and it is commonly known as useless. But the old man, he is happy. So Loya lay on the comfortable reclining chair, silently picked up the juice bucket next to him, and drank the juice while reading a book. The lights were bright and the juice was delicious. He couldn't tell that he was here to go to jail. This is the benefit that Loya strives to win for himself. Even if he is closed for half a year, he must ensure his standard of living, otherwise I will not play with you. Considering the consequences of Loya's disturbance, Sengoku hesitated for a long time, but agreed. After a long time, Garp finally finished the examination, pacing and holding his chin, came to the cell. Well, there should be no problem. How, is there anything that needs improvement? Do you think the space is too small? I told Marshal Sengoku before that this cell needs improvement. Go away, shameless boy. Garp's face darkened and he snorted coldly. But soon, his expression became serious, and he looked at Loya solemnly. Loya, I have a question for you. Luoya was slightly stunned, then spread his hands. I am really a devil fruit person. I'm not asking you this. Garp ignored Loya's answer, waved his hand and continued. I want to ask, what are you hiding? Concealing. What? Good question. Loya took back his hippie smile and looked at Garp calmly. The Navy bosses don't have a fuel-efficient lamp, and even the most unreliable Garp has a delicate heart. Sengoku had told him this kind of thing long ago, so Loya was not surprised by Garp's sudden questioning. Well, here comes the question. What am I hiding? Is it the identity of the transmigrator? The power of the dragon slayer? No, the advantages of the plot? Or something else? There are so many things I'm hiding that I don't even know what I can tell you. What do you want to know? Facing Garp's question, Loya thought about it carefully for a long time, and then asked back. I want to know, what? Garp was stunned for a moment. This question is a bit difficult to answer. In fact, Garp himself didn't know what he wanted to know. Because he was used to not thinking too much and couldn't pay attention to so many details, he now only knew that Loya must be hiding something from everyone. But if he wanted to say it was specific to a certain aspect, it made him numb. Moreover, since Loya can ask this question, he is very likely to be ready to tell the truth. So the question is, why did he tell the truth? Wasn't he afraid of what he was hiding from being exposed? If you say that, then there should be someone in the Navy who knows what Loya is hiding, and his status must be high. But the person in the know knew about it and didn't let himself know. It's very complicated. Having a crystal clear heart does not mean that brain capacity is enough. Garp, who was confused by himself, blinked and was speechless for a long time. After a long time, he scratched the back of his head, and laughed ha ha ha, ha ha ha, ha ha ha. Did I say something? I forgot. Well, it's easy to forget things when you're older. Loya rolled the eyes of the dead fish and quietly watched him perform. If you have nothing to do, leave early, don't interfere with my rest. Ha ha ha, don't be so ruthless. Garp laughed hilariously, and then lost the battle in Loya's sharp eyes. Okay, I'll go. But let's talk about it first. this time you can't escape from prison. Laugh. An ice spear flew past Garp's thigh and stabbed deeply into the ground. Ah, okay, I'll go right now. Garp laughed dryly and ran away in a hurry. Watching Garp leave, Loya, who was lying on the reclining chair, withdrew his right hand, which had been aimed at him, took a sip of the juice, and said to himself, "What I'm hiding, if I say it, it will turn the world upside down." A few days later, the courtyard of the Navy headquarters. Teacher Zepha, are you sure you don't want to talk to them? While helping Zepha to remove the dark prosthesis, Ayan persuaded with a sad face, they are all good children. Doing this will hurt their hearts. I know, Ayan. Zepha bit his cigar, his eyes full of emotion. I know what you said. But I believe in them, just as they believe in me. I've endured too long, really too long. This is my last time and I hope to finish it before I get old. Seeing Zepha's conflicted appearance, Ayan felt a little distressed. Yes. Teacher Zepha, I will always be by your side. Ha 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 ha, that's really good. Zepha was once called the general who doesn't kill, but for the honor of not killing, Zepha paid more injuries and suffered more than Garp and others. This injury has accumulated over the years, and Zepha, who is over 70 years old, knows very well that his time is really running out. Moreover, even if he leaves now, the little guys in the elite camp have Loya to take care of him. With Loya's talent and strength, in the Navy, plus his actions against the Assos family's dragon people, no one in the world government wants to provoke him. Because he's such a crazy guy that no one can stop him. No one would be stupid enough to force such a powerful lunatic to the opposite side. And the most important thing is that Loya's plan still takes time. Zepha is worried about Jones after all. He is going to take this opportunity to go out and help Loya watch a little. When their plan starts, Jones will be Loya's only way out. And at that time, the recruits in this session had basically graduated, and he could also let go of his hands and feet to act. The Navy has never been anything like the Kiba Tower, especially the Navy as its headquarters. The battle with pirates has only two endings, life and death. This is the fate of the Navy. Chapter 242 Mattis, Achilles' heel. Life and death are destiny, wealth is in heaven. Sometimes it's that simple. After graduation, the little guys in the elite battalion are no longer recruits under the protection of Zepha, but the Navy that really takes care of itself. No one has a reason to protect them, and they will face their own dangers and survive the crisis of life and death again and again. Only those who survive can move on. Okay, Ayan, don't worry too much about them. Zepha smiled and comforted her. They are all disciples of this old man. I believe they can handle this difficulty. But you don't even have the courage to tell them, do you? Ayan gave Zepha a deep look, but did not say the words. Let's go, it's almost time. Zepha picked up the coat beside him and put it on him a few times. Vegapunk's time is very precious, let's not delay others. With a cigarette in his mouth, Zepha smiled and held his prosthetic limb. I hope that thing called a shredder can satisfy me. A man that Marshal Sengoku admires so much, there shouldn't be any problem if he shoots. Ayan replied softly and followed Zepha out of the office. Hey Simon, isn't it the time for Teacher Zepha's routine lecture? Why hasn't it been announced yet? Today is another day for elite battalion members to compete in the ranking battle, and it is also the time for Zepha to teach one-on-one. Therefore, everyone in the elite camp ended their daily self-cultivation early and waited in the largest garden in the courtyard. But, looking at the setting sun above, Simon seemed to remember something, and there was a trace of sadness in his eyes, and replied, probably, Teacher Zepha won't come. What? Won't come? Simon, what nonsense are you talking about? Everyone looked at Simon in shock and said they couldn't believe it. Teacher Zepha is not here. How is this possible? Everyone knows that Chief Instructor Zepha is a very strict and serious teacher. As a soldier, the concept of time is also a top priority, so Zepha leads by example, and is never late or absent for decades. And this is Zepha, what did they hear just now? Simon, do you know what happened? As the leader of the former gangster, Mingdi's ability to observe words is higher than those of the people present. He clearly saw the melancholy on Simon's face, and his heart suddenly became cold. Why won't Zephyr come and Simon will show this expression? It's just that there is something to delay today, and it's not a big problem, isn't it? Unless... Will he never come? Thinking of this possibility, Mingda grabbed Tony and took him out of the garden with a moon step. So, what happened? Why did Minder take Simon away? Aldo scratched the back of his head blankly and looked at the people around him. However, no one knew how to answer him. On the other side of the courtyard, after listening to Simon's story, Mingdi's face became very complicated. And Simon, after speaking, was silent, playing with the iron ball in his hand. His fruit ability has gradually developed and become stronger, and now he can direct the heavy iron ball to attack the target like a light iron sand, but he is not very skilled. So Zephyr suggested that he carry 2 iron balls with him, so that he can exercise the stability of his arms while being familiar with the weight. However, now he is still using this advice to train himself, and the teacher Zephyr who gave him this advice has left. If it was said that this matter was only known to a few high-level people in the Navy, then from today, this matter is on the surface. It is even said that the whole sea will tremble for it. After all, since Zephyr is going to form a pirate guerrilla team, he is bound to leave the headquarters. As the most important source of the Navy's reserve force, the elite battalion where the fresh blood is supplied will be without a leader. Such a big thing can't be hidden from anyone. Coupled with the illustrious name that Zephyr had won in the first half of his life, countless pirates were all terrified. Now this tiger is returning to the sea, which is something that all pirates don't want to see. Therefore, Simon felt that it was no longer a matter of transcendence to tell the truth to his companions now. Mingdi's chest kept heaving and he gasped for breath. After a while, he calmed down. His long and narrow eyes narrowed together. Pirate Gorilla. Smasher. Boom. The wolf Kiba's stick was heavily smashed to the ground by Mingd, smashing the ground into a pit full of cracks. Then why didn't he tell us? What are we to him? Throwing away playthings. Creak. The 2 iron balls were pinched, making a sour sound of Kiba. Facing the roaring Mingd, Simon, not to be outdone, glared back at the senior who was 2 years higher than himself, and said coldly, "You know what Teacher Zephyr thinks, Mingd. We're the Navy, not the North Street you used to hang out with, not so much betrayal and distrust." Black, corner, street. Hearing this name that he hadn't heard for a long time, Mingda was dumbfounded and lowered his head silently. Yeah, this isn't North Street. Seeing the change in Mingdi's expression, Simon knew that he was too excited and hurt his companion's heart. However, he did not explain or apologize, but said lightly, "Let's go, call everyone together." If Mingd hasn't broken away from his previous role to this day, Simon is the one who is the saddest. Raising his head slightly, Mingd asked, "Let's go. Where are we going?" "Of course I'm looking for Loya." Simon turned his head and looked at the sky in the distance, which was the direction of the headquarters, prison. If such a big thing happened, he must know. Navy headquarters prison, in front of the gate. "We are here to visit, why not let us in?" "That's right, Loya is our companion, not a bad guy. Uncle Mattis, just let us in." Looking at the noisy group of elite battalion members in front of him, Mattis Lan raised his arms and stopped in front of the gate, shaking the muscles of his chest constantly. "It's really not handsome at all, you guys." Mattis blocked the door with his size similar to a gorilla, and 2 rows of prison guards surrounded him, which directly ruined the idea of Simon and others wanting to forcibly break through. "This is the order of Marshal Sengoku. During the confinement of Lieutenant General Loya, no one is allowed to visit," Mattis said righteously. And Simon and the others looked at him suspiciously, wondering what the hell he was. "And, isn't it enough to have Sengoku's order?" And Mattis shouted loudly, but the next second, he clasped his fists beside his face, twisting around like an earthworm, his face full of intoxication, and, he. N. As long as I complete the task perfectly, Lieutenant General Seaver agreed to have dinner with me. Hey. Hey. Onlookers. Well, we almost forgot about this one. Admiral Seaver, the third and last female lieutenant general in the headquarters, besides the older generation of Vice Admiral Crane and the powerful Vice Admiral Momotu. Although he is not a powerful lieutenant general like Flying Squirrel and Tautu, his strength is also at the mid to upper level of the headquarters lieutenant general. But most importantly, Lieutenant General Seaver, she will always look like a loli. This hits the Achilles heel of Major General Mattis. Chapter 243 Aokiji Visiting Prison. No, it's the 1 reward. Finally, in the last week of this month, Dashu received the 10,000 rewards again. Woo, it's not easy. Let a lolicon who even went to face the dragons to protect Loli and then went out to flee, to give up the agreement with Loli. That is absolutely impossible. Even though that Loli is in his late 30s. That is to say, absolutely will not give way. Simon rubbed his temples with a headache and put his hands on his hips, only to feel so tired. Why are there not many normal people in our navy these days? Then let's go for it. Boom. Aludo, who was fully armed, slammed the gloves together heavily, splashing a piece of orange sparks. Come and drag Major General Mattis with me, you go in. Before Aludo could finish speaking, Simon interrupted him with the Husky's gaze. Breakthrough with what? Although Mattis's position is only a major general, his strength is indeed very different from the 17 lieutenant generals in the naval headquarters. But don't forget, his special superhuman handsome fruit ability. With the existing strength of the elite battalion members, just now, any of them may be knocked down by the opponent, including Naruto himself. And as long as he puts down the next one, Mattis will be handsome, and let his strength skyrocket. When the time comes, don't talk about dragging the other party, it's a good thing if you can't go up and send the head to let the other party stack the layers of the pig knife. Cut, is it all because of lack of strength? Ming unwillingly held the wolf kiba stick and looked at the gorilla in front of him. Okay, you all go back quickly. Mattis listened to their conversation, and said with a smile, I don't have to report today's matter, and you will not be punished. However, you have to go back honestly, understand? Hearing Mattis' words, a group of people looked ugly and couldn't make up their minds. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared among several people. Ah la, it's really lively here. Kuzan, who was wearing a dark blue shirt and a white suit vest, stretched his waist, pushed up the blindfolds on his eyes, and glanced at Simon and the others. Hey, this is not an elite camp kid. Why are you here? General Aokiji. Bang. A tidy standing up sounded, and a salute suddenly came from the prison gate. Looking at the green pheasant in front of him, Simon was overjoyed. Their identities are not yet qualified, and there is no important thing to go to see the General Aokiji, but since Aokiji took the initiative to appear, then things will turn for the better. So, Simon saluted and said urgently, Master Chingzi, the matter of Teacher Zepha. Well, I knew it would be like this. Kuzan interrupted Simon directly. When he knew that Zepha had gone to the scientific troop station, he knew that the little guys in the elite battalion it will turn upside down. So he went to Sengoku to ask for a pass and rushed to the prison. Fortunately, these idiots didn't say that they would force their way into the prison, otherwise none of them would be better off. Not everyone has the luck and strength of Loya, and they can still be intact after causing trouble. Signaling the elite battalion members not to worry, Kuzan took out the pass given by Sengoku from Kabuto and handed it to Mattis. This is Marshal Sengoku's pass and handwriting, I need to see Loya. With Sengoku's letter, Mattis naturally would not refuse. After verifying the above order, he waved the soldiers to disperse and said to Kuzan, Okay General Aokiji, please come in. Kuzan nodded and walked towards the door. Suddenly, he turned his head and said to Simon and the others, I will tell Loya about this, you should go back first. As for the position of the chief instructor of the recruit battalion, it is estimated that there is no need to worry. Taking this opportunity, it is also time for the elite battalion to rebuild. The barracks has become independent. Don't make trouble these days, just stay honest, you know. Yes, Admiral Iokiji. Everyone in the elite camp looked at each other and had to choose to compromise. Seeing this scene, Kuzan showed a satisfied smile and turned his head to move on. The Navy headquarters prison, the lowest level. Yo, Mr. Kuzan, what kind of wind brought you here today? Loya rolled over from the soft bed, raised her hand and greeted Kuzan. Looking at the cell next door, which has been transformed into a food storage room, Kuzan slowly moved a stool and sat down in front of the stone railing of Halu, and said speechlessly, "It looks like you are inside. The days are better than I imagined." Quote. That's not it, it's better if you don't have a mission. Loya replied with a smile, and at the same time took out a carton of milk and handed it over. Would you like some? Strawberry flavor. Let's wait until you come out to drink. Kuzan decisively refused Loya's invitation, because he saw that it was turned out from the quilt, but he knew that Loya was used to sleeping naked. I came today to tell you something. Speaking of which, Kuzan looked at Loya seriously. Let's talk first, don't get excited after listening to it. Don't get excited. Loya put away her hippie smile and sat down seriously. Well, tell me. Do you remember what you said before? What I said? Loya asked, frowning. About whom? Suddenly, he felt as if he had been forgetting something extremely important. The next second, Kuzan's words made his premonition come true. It's about Teacher Zepha. Kuzan looked at Loya and said the answer calmly. He decided to leave the headquarters, set up a pirate guerrilla team, and go to the sea to hunt pirates. Zepha, teacher. Loya stared at Kuzan in a daze, and quickly recalled what Kuzan told him when he was still in the elite camp assessment test. Listen to Loya, no matter what Teacher Zepha does, it is his own choice, and no one can interfere. Here's what Kuzan told him. As the dignity of the seaman. If the previous Loya didn't know much, or was angry at Kuzan and Sengoku's inaction, and let Zepha go all the way to extremes, then the current Loya no longer thinks so much. Coming to this world and coming to the Navy for so long, Loya has long understood what freedom and dignity are. This was something he had never felt before when he lived a carefree life in the peaceful era. When he came here, he was a newcomer, and he needed to slowly integrate those theoretical theories on paper into reality. Then, Loya understood. Because this is Zepha's own choice. As a disciple, not only should he not stop him, he should support him, just like Ain and Binz. However, he is also a high-ranking lieutenant general, and his butt decides his head, which makes him unable to be as free and easy as Ain and others. Therefore, keeping silent is what he should do. But why this time? Luoya suddenly realized why Sengoku locked himself up at this time and did not allow anyone to visit. But he doesn't care about Sengoku's thoughts now, he just wants to know, why did Zepha go to sea so long before the original? His plan has only just begun. His plan is still in the preparatory stage. As long as he follows the time of the original book, he is sure to rewrite his ending without stopping Zepha. Why, but now? Chapter 244 Waiting for the Opportunity. In response, Kuzan gave Loya a deep look, as if to say. This is why you don't have a B number in your heart. No, Zepha will choose this time to leave, you don't know the reason. Seeing Kuzan's eyes, Loya was also dumbfounded, then shook his head with a wry smile. Sorry, I didn't turn the corner. The so-called parties are obsessed with bystanders. Zepha will choose to leave at this point in time, and even say that the elite camp will be left behind. The most important reason is actually because of Loya. It was he who gave Zepha the courage to leave, because of his appearance. Zepha knew very well that even if he left, the little guys in the elite camp would not have any trouble. And he knew that Loya was a person worthy of trust. Even if he doesn't say anything, Loya will carry the banner of the elite camp and shelter his fellows until graduation. Trust is something that is sometimes incomprehensible. Zephyr never thought about the situation where Roha would voluntarily leave his companions alone. Although they didn't get along for a long time, in terms of trust ranking, in Zephyr's heart, Roha might be higher than Flying Squirrel and Kuzan. Thinking of this, Loya raised his hand and reached out to Kuzan. Mr. Kuzan, did you bring a phone bug? Huh. Seeing that Loya didn't do anything, Kuzan also sighed with relief, took out the phone bug and handed it to him. Let's make a long story short, when you closed the door, you were busy. The headquarters of the Navy, the station of the scientific forces. In a bright medical room, Vegapunk put on gloves with the help of his assistant, and said to Zephyr who was lying on the table, Mr. Zephyr, I will give you local anesthesia later to ensure that success rate of surgery. Quote. No need. Zephyr took his last sip with the cigar in his mouth, took it down with his intact left hand, and threw it in the trash can. He said with a smile, I have never seen such a big storm in my life. This trivial matter doesn't require anesthesia. Is that so? Vegapunk stopped for a while to get the syringe, then turned his head slowly. Then, let's start like this. After he finished speaking, he had the huge robotic arm pushed over and placed beside Zephyr. In that case, please bear with me. Then. Blue blue, blue blue. I told you not to bring phone bugs in. Vegapunk's face darkened, and he roared angrily, which bastard did it? Stand up for me. At this moment, Zephyr's embarrassed laughter came from behind him. Hey, that. Zephyr held a small phone bug in his left palm, which was his spare phone bug on weekdays. I forgot I brought this. Please wait a minute, I take a call. Mr. Zephyr. Vegapunk looked at him weakly, and waved his hand after a while to make everyone around him avoid him. Okay, please. Waiting for everyone around to leave, Zephyr stared at the phone bug in his hand and grinned. Hey, Loya, what's the matter? In other words, when Teacher Zephyr goes out to sea, is there any significance in helping me stare at Jones? After listening to Zephyr's explanation, Loya sighed leisurely. This is really hard work for you, Teacher Zephyr. Since you can do this for me, I can't be left behind either. Mr. Kuzan, please come here. After talking to Zephyr, Loya called out to Kuzan. The power of death told Loya that Kuzan didn't go very far, just waiting at the corridor between the bottom floor and the upper floor of the prison. Hearing Loya's call, Kuzan quickly came to him and took the phone bug. Feeling the lightness on Loya's face, Kuzan asked, looking at your appearance, I don't need to say more, right? That's good, I can go out on the mission with confidence. Yes, but now I still need your help with two things, Mr. Kuzan. Loya smiled and said, first, I need detailed information on Chiwahai, including their recent movements in recent years, a word don't fall, the most detailed kind. Chiwahai. Kuzan frowned. What do you want that? And, the most detailed information, without the consent of Marshal Sengoku, no one can come up with it. It's okay, I know. You just tell Marshal Sengoku that I need it, and he'll understand. Is that so? Kuzan blinked, feeling like he was getting the point. But he didn't rush to ask. After all, Loya had already said, tell Marshal Sengoku and he will understand. Nodding, Kuzan continued. Okay, that's the first thing, so what's the second thing? Tell Simon that in half a year, I need men, and ask them who wants to do it with me. Loya opened his mouth wide, revealing 8 shiny doors, Kiba. I'm not interested in waiting any longer. If I can't keep up, don't blame me if I'm eliminated. Let a group of guys who have just entered the elite camp for less than a year like you graduate after half a year. Kuzan thought in a daze, and suddenly smiled. Okay, I understand. I will inform them. Although I don't know what Roha and Zephyr said, but looking at Roha's current expression, Kuzan has a hunch. The things he has been wondering about will soon be answered. Watching Kuzan walk all the way, the smile on Loya's face became stronger and stronger, and finally Ultimate went crazy. Whoa! The entire layer of the prison was frozen by the power of ice that erupted in an instant, and the walls and railings were covered with thick layers of ice. Standing in this prison like a hell of ice and snow, Loya's sneer spread far away. Edward Wable. Whitebeard's son. Ha ha, interesting. Throughout the original work, the culprit responsible for Zepha's tragic ending is actually this fool with an unqualified IQ. And don't look at him stupid, this person still has the insidious and cunning side of most pirates. Many years ago, he was caught by Zepha and prayed for his life on the grounds of, I have an 80-year-old mother and an 8-year-old child. Judging by his low IQ and pitiful appearance, a general who doesn't kill, Zepha let it go. Who would have thought that Edward Wable, who escaped, not only did not feel grateful, but even considered it his own shame. So a few years ago, at the age of 65, Zepha attacked the training ship he led, causing the most serious damage in the history of the elite battalion. Even Zepha had one arm chopped off in the attack. Beloved students die in front of them, and there is nothing they can do. In addition, his wife and children also died in the pirate attack, which made Zepha feel disheartened and fell into extremes. However, the battle that killed Zepha in the end was because Edward Wable became the new King Shichibukai. In this case, Loya has made a decision. He didn't want to know why the world government made Zepha's life and death enemy become the King's Chiwahai. All he knew now was that Edward Wable and his mother, Miss Barkin, were ambitious fellows. Having ambition means having weakness. Since they can accept the position of the King's Chiwahai in the future, it will lead to Zepha's betrayal. So, why not bring this plan forward? As a transmigrator, Loya said that following the original book is the shame of the transmigrator army. Chapter 245 Vow Not to Kill. Navy Headquarters, Elite Camp Courtyard. In half a year. The news brought by Kuzan made all the members of the elite battalion dumbfounded, unable to speak for a long time. Graduation in half a year. Loya really looks down on them. The reason why the elite camp is set for a 3-year period is that it has been finalized after considering the talent and growth rate of each member. No matter how the recruits who join the elite camp are called monsters by the outside world, they also need time to experience and grow step by step. Cultivation can't be done overnight, and it took 2 years for the son of Destiny's Straw Hat to return after practicing for 2 years. In half a year, the members of this class of Arudo and I should all graduate smoothly. After Ming considered it carefully, he looked at Kuzan solemnly and said, I trouble General Qingzi to give Loya a message. After half a year, we will definitely stand in front of him. He was really fed up with this situation where he couldn't control the situation. Since the mini incident, he has always been a spectator. It doesn't matter if he has him or not. Especially the previous Ian Island incident, although it is a very good thing that no one is left behind. But Loya was right at the time, they were a bunch of Chan oil. Fortunately, it was Yuhi Shanks who detained himself and others at the time, not some ferocious pirates. Otherwise, their ending may not be so happy. So Ming made up his mind that in the next 6 months, even if he died, he would die on the road of becoming stronger. However, unlike these veterans, Simon and Minnie looked at each other and smiled bitterly, not knowing what to say at the moment. Takis really like his monsters. Simon was so emotional. The elite camp wants to graduate. Although there are only 3 tests, each of these tests is impossible for ordinary people to complete. For Simon himself, it was not the actual combat test and the number of prison death battle clearance levels that limited his graduation, but the physical fitness test that should have been the simplest. His physical condition is well known and does not require much verbal explanation. He was frail and sickly since he was a child, and he was not on the same level as his fellow elite battalions in terms of strength and speed. In addition to the devil fruit ability, he also has a better head. After all, he is the second son of the famous Jinhu family, and it is a big joke to have a bad head. However, in the actual battle, the head does not have absolute strength to be reliable. Let him reach the level of physical fitness for graduation in half a year, Simon thinks, let him do one more practical test. The same is true for Minnie. Hard-working genius. This is what Loya made to Minnie when the results of the elite camp selection test were announced. But it's not so much that she is a genius, it is better to say that she is just a tough and hard-working ordinary person. To let Minnie graduate in half a year, Loya is undoubtedly a bit difficult, including Kuzan who thinks so. However, I want to give it a try. In the surprised eyes of everyone, Minnie calmly stated her declaration. In half a year, I will graduate and show it to everyone. Since Minnie said so, wouldn't it be shameful if I dragged my feet? Simon shook his head dumbly, spread his hands, and followed the team. Are you looking down on our women when you say this? Minnie suddenly gave Simon a dangerous look, especially for a second on the other side's thin-ribbed body, and then... Cut. Simon. Okay, you have big breasts and you are justified. Seeing the performance of everyone in the elite camp, Kuzan breathed a sigh of relief. Because of Zepha's departure, the worry that they will be decadent has also faded. If that's the case, then you should practice hard. Kuzan said lightly, and then announced one thing. From today until the rectification of the elite battalion is completed, I will be responsible for the position of the elite battalion instructor. Speaking of this, Kuzan's calm face showed a dangerous smile. You will mess with me in the future. Gollum. For some reason, the members of the elite battalion suddenly had an ominous premonition. 2 months later, the first half of the Great Route. Several huge warships slowly sailed to the port, causing the pirates in the town to immediately panic. Why is there a navy here? The captain of the pirate group roared excitedly. Yeah, why? Obviously, the captain sends a huge amount of treasure to the naval bases of the recent branches every year, so that they can loot in this sea area. They have not been pointed by the navy with cannons for several years. At this time, a crew member came tremblingly holding a phone bug and handed it to the captain of his own who was angry. Old boss, Colonel Hamster's call. Got through. Get through. The anxious pirate captain grabbed the phone bug and scolded, trash. Get through and get through, what are you afraid of? Give it to me, I just asked him if he took the money. Don't want to work yet. As he said that, he brought the phone bug to his mouth, completely unaware that the avatar simulated by the phone bug was not the face he was familiar with at all, opened his mouth and scolded, Hamster, you bastard. Take our money and let the navy chase and kill me, believe it or not, I will publicize the fact that you receive a fee, At this moment, in the naval base located in the southeast of the island, the naval officer known as Colonel Hamster turned pale when the other party spoke. Combined with his wretched and rat-like appearance, the name of the king rat is now confirmed. Hello, why don't you talk? Do you think it's okay if you don't talk? Let me tell you, even if I escape this time, you don't want to take any money this year. Click. The phone bug was hung up by a big hand, and the dark-skinned Shuzuo drew out his saber and rubbed the blade on the ground to create a series of sparks. I don't think it's necessary to listen anymore, Colonel Hamster. Are you right? As a disciple who went to sea with ZFA, Shuzuo, like ZFA at the moment, couldn't get a grain of sand into his eyes. If it weren't for the lack of evidence, he would have chopped up the navy scum in front of him and fed it to the dogs. After all, he's a known radical tough guy in the navy. Facing the murderous Shuzuo, the hamster sat on the ground and kept backing away. No, don't kill me, I can explain. Suddenly, the hamster remembered something and said expectantly, yes, I have treasure. As long as you let me go, I will give half of my treasure, no. All to you. Feeling the blade of Shuzuo's blade that was getting closer to his neck, the hamster quickly changed his mouth. However, this is only to delay the time of his death. Oh, all the treasure. Laugh. The sword light flashed, and the head fell to the ground. I'm going to interrogate the navy at this base that helps you carry treasures for this kind of thing. You are so greedy, your subordinates must be more greedy than you. Shuzuo quietly stared at the headless corpse in front of him, then took out his phone worm, dialed out. Hey, Mr. Zepha. I have already solved it here. This Colonel Hamster has indeed taken over the benefits of the Oscar pirates and has been protecting them from looting in this sea area. Damn! Zephyr angrily smashed his fists and smashed the deck rails to pieces. Karma! Bang! Zephyr clenched the shredder on his right hand tightly, biting Kiba and looking at the devastated town. Alarmy assault. Kill them all for me. The General Zephyr, who did not kill, finally let go of his oath not to kill and began to kill. Chapter 246 Feel Hopeless. Boom. Boom. Crash. Cannons roared and smoke filled the air. The solid ground shook like the surface of a lake, and countless mud and sand were thrown up high, then fell and danced in the sky. Perhaps a few days ago, this town was still bustling and bustling. The fishermen drying their nets and the businessmen who did business would wake up early and go to the dark, working hard and happily for their families. However, with the arrival of the Oscar pirates, all this peace and happiness disappeared. Instead, it was a mess of houses, and the lingering smell of blood. The tragedies of this scene were exposed under the blue sky and daylight, and what brought them to Zephyr was only heaviness and depression. I used to be really too kind. Standing in the middle of the ruins, Zephyr was silent as he listened to the battle sound in his ears. Behind him, Ain held Zephyr's cape and looked at him quietly. No matter what Zephyr wants to do, just follow in his footsteps. Ain has always thought so, and did so. At this moment, the captain of the Oscar pirates suddenly rushed out from the corner of the ruins, holding a long sword as long as one person, and stabbed at Zephyr. Go to hell. Damn Navy. Catch the thief first, catch the king. This principle is universal no matter which world it is placed in. The captain didn't actually want to kill Zephyr, he just wanted to capture him and get a chance for his departure. As for why the target would be Zephyr, from the position of the other party, you can see that the status is very high, and he is too old. When he was in his prime and the bounty was approaching 50 million Bailey at one point, he believed that he was still sure of winning an old man. However, how do you say that sentence? Shilezi is still the head iron. Anyway, the moment he gave up hiding and chose to shoot, his ending was already doomed. Crack. Bang. In the shocked eyes of the captain of the Oscar pirates, the purple-haired old man who looked like a long-suffering old man used his huge mechanical arm to break the long sword in his hand in a casual manner, splattering blood from his mouth, and then threw him easily. A grasp in the palm of your hand. Creak. Zephyr exerted a little force, and there was a strong bone cracking sound from his body. Cough. Ah. The pain of breaking all his bones was not something he could endure. Because of the bribery, he had no longer had the perseverance that he had been living in comfort in the past few years, and he suddenly screamed out in agony. It was only then that he finally saw the old man's appearance. Former Admiral Zephyr. A pair of eyeballs suddenly became round, and he looked at this legendary figure in shock. Hey, your knowledge is good. It seems that you have a long time to go to sea. Facing the shock of the pirates, Zephyr grinned. Because I saw so many dead people, did I think of such a safe way to rob? Tisk tisk, you are very smart, but it's a pity. Smash bunt. Boom. Without giving the other party a chance to answer at all, a strong explosion suddenly came from the front section of the huge mechanical arm. With the detonation of the explosive, the pirates in Zephyr's hands immediately turned into a pile of minced meat, which was evenly dispersed on the surrounding land of 100 meters. Listen to the pirates inside. Your captain is dead. Surrender and don't kill. Surrender without killing. Surrender without killing. The shouts of the pirate guerrillas echoed in the empty town, and the pirates hiding in the dark were terrified, not knowing what to do. Looking at the pirate flag that was raised and lit in the center of the town, the pirates waited for a long time, and finally the first person stood up. Don't shoot. I surrender. I surrender. With the first one, there will be a second one, and Zephyr will not take the lives of his soldiers for no reason, just to clean up the pirates. So he gestured to the left and right to protect the first person who ate crabs, and at the same time be sure to escort him back. Come over, you guys, be careful. The soldier who received the order stood at attention and saluted. Yes. Creatures have a herd mentality, especially this group of pirates who know they will die. When they saw that surrender really would not die, they all chose to surrender. Half an hour later, Zephyr stood on the shore, watching the men who were escorting the pirates. Tie them all up and put all the weapons on board. Yes. What is a guerrilla team? No guns, no cannons, the enemy made it for us. Seeing the pirates kneeling in a row by the sea, the ammunition that became somewhat scarce due to the repeated battles was replenished. Zephyr smiled with satisfaction. But at this time, a soldier suddenly rushed over and waved the document in his hand. Lord Zephyr, emergency. What's going on in a hurry? Speak slowly. After being glared by Zephyr, the soldier calmed down quite a bit. After taking a few breaths, he stood at attention and saluted. Report. There is news from the patrol team that a huge turtle is swimming in our direction. Looking at the building above, it should be inhabited. Quote. A huge turtle, a building. Zephyr was stunned for a moment, and suddenly the phone call he made half a month ago rang. Understood. Zephyr nodded and said, pass my order, the whole army is on board. Yes, the whole army is on board. The loud horn resounded through the beach, causing the members of the Oscar pirates to froze in place. What's the situation? Why did the Navy suddenly board the ship? And, still not take us away? Are you going to let us go? The Navy brought out by Zephyr were all elites. With an order, several warships slowly left the port in just a few minutes. Then, dong dong dong. With the sound of mechanical vibrations, a Navy cannon with a thick waist was aimed at the coast, and the dark muzzle was coiled with the breath of death, making the pirates pale and their eyes desperate. No, don't kill us. Help, help. Lock us up in the advanced city. Don't fire. But no matter how terribly they screamed, the naval soldiers on the warship were deaf and expressionless. These soldiers selected by Zephyr, except for the first one, absolutely obey the orders. The second rule is that all are outside the elite. There is also the third most important thing in common, that is, they all have a deep hatred with the pirates, and the kind of hatred that can't be resolved by the strong transformation. They are all tough elements in the Navy who are not inferior to the Akainu faction. Standing on the deck of the main ship, Zephyr gave a grim order with a cigar in his mouth. Fire! Bang bang bang! Boom! This is what you do to civilians. Zephyr shouted loudly towards the smoke-filled coast. Now, feel their desperation as well. After that, Zephyr didn't look at the shore again, and ordered to move in the direction of the huge turtle. Navy Headquarters, Marshal's Office. What do you think Zephyr is doing now? Holding the report in his hand, Sengoku frowned and asked the woman beside him. In response to Sengoku's question, General Crane shook his head silently, before speaking after a long time. That man Zephyr, since that day, is not the man we used to know. After a pause, General Crane continued. However, he is just cleaning up some little pirates, and it won't bring any bad results. To be able to call a pirate with a reward of tens of millions of Baileys a little pirate, this is probably the confidence that only the Navy headquarters has. As the most powerful organization on the Great Route, what they need to be afraid of has always been only the 4 emperors and the king under the 7 Marshalseas. Although I say so, Sengoku put away the document with a sullen face and handed it to the goat beside him, so that he could chew the document and swallow it. Danzifa is so messed up, I always feel like something is going to happen. Chapter 247 Who will be the first? The first one. Missing. General Crane silently picked up the document and handed it to Sengoku, motioning him to give the document to the goat to eat, and then continued, well, your worries are not without reason. And, quote, whether it's Zephyr or Loya, we should continue to be suspicious of them, Sengoku. He was able to take the position of the Naval General Staff not because he believed in the protagonist's remarks. On the contrary, to this point, Crane knows very well how much betrayal and deception this world is full of. She suspects Loya and Zephyr now, Not because she doesn't trust them and trusts her former companions, it's just her butt that decides her head. Responsibilities are without hesitation. Zephyr and Loya. Sengoku rubbed his brows melancholy, feeling that his white hair was going to grow more. The two of them should observe slowly. If there are ghosts in their hearts, there will be flaws in their actions. However, I believe that Zephyr, no matter what he does, must be to destroy the pirates. Well, I also believe this. Lieutenant General Crane suddenly laughed, but just in case, it's better to pay attention. I will arrange this kind of thing. By the way, Sengoku, the plan they said, how has it been implemented now? Well, Sengoku secretly used observation haki to perceive the surrounding situation, and then cautiously said after confirming that there was no one around. Jones has officially entered the Great Route, and it is estimated that when the Loya confinement ends, their plans will begin to move forward. Quote. Then who is the first target? You must know that Chiwahai is a pirate recognized by the world government, and its forces are powerful. If one is bad, that is the real mess. From the day Loya and Zephyr proposed this plan to now, Lieutenant General Crane has always felt that it was inappropriate. Although she wanted to eliminate the Kibukai system, she always thought it was too hasty. Moreover, on the emergency remarks of the plan, the option of, if necessary, you can consider letting Loya leave the Navy and break into the pirates, option. If the plan really went to that point, it would be hard for Crane not to doubt that this was something that Loya had planned for a long time. The target candidate has not yet been determined, but Sengoku put on the signature gesture of Commander Akari, crossing his hands and resting his chin on the back of his hands. Loyatokuzan asked me to go to the Shichibukai under the present king before. Details, I reckon, the answer to this question will soon be known. Quote. Really, you're still so confident, Sengoku. But in my opinion, there are not many candidates for them, said Lieutenant General Crane. Except the violent Coon Bear who has joined the pacifist plan, and the world's largest swordsman Mahawk, who is alone in the world. Among the remaining 5 people, the Pirate Queen is on the same side, with any force. They have nothing to do with each other. Loya and the others can't find a reason to do anything to her, and it doesn't make any sense to do it. Moreover, the position of the Windless Belt is not so good. Therefore, she can be excluded. The Sea Hero is very peaceful. As a link to ease the relationship between humans and the Fishman Island, even if Loya is not clear, it is impossible for Zephyr to not see the importance of his existence to the situation in the sea. So, Sengoku took out the wanted notices that he was about to shred, and chose 3 of them. You mean, Loya and the others will be among these 3 people? Sand Crocodile, G. Rock Doll. Yasha, Don Quixote Doflamingo. Moonlight, Mariah. After becoming the king under the 7 martial seas, their previous bounty orders will be voided. But in order to remind himself and others that these kings under the Chiwahai have always been pirates, Sengoku still keeps the wanted orders of these people. You know that Brother Ming has a very deep background, although the Don Quixote family left the Holy Land many years ago, was expelled from the Tianlong people, and even carried the ugly name of Traitor's family. But Crane didn't finish her words, but her meaning was self-evident. The Emperor of the Dark World, Joker, has underground forces all over the world. If it is said that the origin of this name is not helped by Mingi's bloodline, it is only obtained from the protection of Chiwahai's identity. They will not believe what they say. Therefore, Doflamingo can't move, at least the Navy can't move him. Well, I see. If Loya targets Doflamingo, I'll stop him. Sengoku nodded, indicating that he knew what to do. Then there are only these 2 left. Moonlight Mariah and G. Rock Doll. Sengoku took out the information, looked at it, and said, Morlia's words are still curled up in the misty sea as always, nesting on the horror bark to create his zombie army. And K. Rockthal. Speaking of this, Sengoku's face suddenly became very strange. He seems to have become a hero of Alabasta during this time. The reason is because he repelled a big pirate who offered a reward of 300 million and protected Alabasta from being invaded by pirates. Hero. Hero. Lieutenant General. He was also stunned, thinking he had heard it wrong. Yes. Sengoku handed the information to Crane. See for yourself. Ah, this is really, the little guy who doesn't understand. After reading the information, the Crane was also at a loss. However, it's Alabasta after all, so don't take it lightly, Sengoku. Ah, I know, I'll keep the bases nearby on Alabasta. Alabasta, the kingdom of the royal family of Neferutari. The Neferutari family is one of the 20 royal families who founded the world government 800 years ago. Also known as the Tianlong people. I don't know why, but I have a hunch. Sengoku smacked his lips and said, there is always something important that we overlooked. I advise you not to imitate Garp's crow's mouth. Crane gave Sengoku a sullen look. Look at his promise that his grandson will become a navy. What happened? He is now famous on the Great Route. The super rookie, Fire Fist Ace. It is estimated that there will definitely be one of him in this year's supernova. Ha ha ha, I just said that there must be something wrong with Kakuna's education method. Sengoku laughed, laughing at the embarrassment of a certain naval hero. Time flies, time goes by. Half a year has passed since the Chinese New Year. Navy Elite Battalion, in the courtyard. Standing in front of the members of the last elite camp, Kuzan's lazy eyes became full of emotion. Really, unexpected. When Zephyr left, excluding Tony who left the team to upgrade, there were a total of 26 members of the elite battalion who had not graduated, including Minnie and Simon who had just joined the elite battalion for less than a year. 6 months later, a total of 22 members graduated. Of the remaining 4, one unfortunately died in the actual combat test of the graduation assessment. The remaining 3 were reluctantly removed from the elite camp because of their serious injuries. In other words, in the past 6 months, almost all members of the elite camp have graduated. Indeed, even in the eyes of Kuzan, this class of elite battalion members is the weakest class. However, this graduation effect is absolutely unprecedented. You must know that the graduation test of the elite camp is a multi-party inspector, and there is not a bit of water that can be mixed in it. And being able to accomplish this feat shows how much effort these recruits have put in and how much they have suffered. Looking at the group of energetic graduates in front of them, their ranks range from second lieutenant to lieutenant colonel, Kuzan was very satisfied, and then all of them. Bang. Stand at attention. Swish. Target headquarters prison, run. Walk. Chapter 248 We graduated. Second. The lowest level of the headquarters prison, where felons are held. That. Lieutenant General Loya, you can leave now. A prison guard rubbed his hands and said flatteringly to Loya with a smile. Although he was eager to leave quickly, the gap between his identity and strength was there, and the jailers did not dare to urge him. In the past 6 months, this person has come to be locked up. This is clearly an uncle. The bed was dirty and they washed it. When it's time for dinner, they are in charge of cooking. Even if the toenails are long, they are responsible for helping to trim them. What the hell did you come here for? 20-star hotel or what? However, in the face of Loya's promiscuous power, they had to wait and do the work of sweeping the floor, cooking, washing, stacking, and trimming their toenails. Sengoku has spoken. As long as Loya does not escape from prison for half a year, the prison guards they serve will be promoted by 1 rank and their salary will be doubled. This made the jailers want to cry without tears, but they were able to hold on to Kiba's gnashing teeth. Otherwise, it is estimated that no one dares to stay in the prison for a long time, and all those who dare to stay will be arrested by Loya. Now, the half-year lockdown is finally over. Considering that a lieutenant general had a very terrifying aura of getting up from not getting enough sleep, these jailers waited until noon before they dared to go up and wake Loya up. Hearing his words, Loya, who was listlessly drinking a milkshake, said, "Oh," and then she didn't respond. This made the jailer who opened his mouth feel anxious, not knowing what to do. Fortunately, however, Loya immediately laughed again and said, Okay, these days can be considered difficult for you. But it stands to reason that today is the last day of the lockdown. Wouldn't it be a prison break if I leave now? So I'd better go tomorrow. Jailer. No, please, Lord Loya. Just let us go. You see. General Aokiji has brought the members of the elite camp to pick you up. You shouldn't let them wait until tomorrow, right? Looking at the prison guards who were crying and grabbing the ground in front of him, Loya only felt bored for a while. Putting down the cup, he licked the pink Yuhi strawberry milkshake from his lips with his tongue. Loya took out a tissue and wiped it. Okay. Isn't it just a joke with you? As for crying like this, Loya said with a look of contempt, then stood up, stretched, and hit Heish. Kuzan teacher too, what are you doing here so early? I have food and drink here, and there is someone to serve. I don't have to do a task yet, little one. What a comfortable life. However, complaining, while talking, Loya picked up the lieutenant general's cloak on the hanger, put it on his shoulders and said to the jailers, then, I will leave. Lord Loya, please walk slowly. After walking a few steps, Loya suddenly stopped and turned around. The frightened jailers trembled, for fear that the uncle would do something else. But fortunately, Loya was not planning to go back, but pointed to the cell and said, oh, right. Don't disturb this cell that I carefully arranged, and clean it up every day. Maybe I will use it in the future. Will you still use it later? When the jailers were crying and mournful, they all saluted. Yes, Lieutenant General Loya. Enjoying the admiring, unmistakable gazes of the Navy soldiers along the way, Loya calmly came to the ground and met Kuzan and the others who had been waiting for a long time. As soon as they met, Loya raised her hand to greet Kuzan without Masayuki. Yo, Mr. Kuzan. Good morning. Morning. Kuzan was stunned for a moment, then looked up at the sky calmly. The early summer sunshine gently hangs in the center of the sky, swaying light and heat to the fullest. Then, violent pheasant mouth. Serpent. Boom. The crushed ice splashed, and the cold was soaring into the sky. Ling Lai's chill made the Navy who just put on their summer clothes wish they were wearing a padded jacket now, even if not, even a long-sleeved shirt on the right. Looking at the ice serpent circling around Loya, Kuzan made an unhappy cut, and then smiled. Welcome back, Loya. Afterwards, the 22 members of the former elite battalion were lined up behind him. The current naval officers saluted neatly and shouted excitedly, welcome back, Lieutenant General Loya. This is. Noticing the change in Simon's clothes, Loya raised her eyebrows and asked, you actually graduated, or a second lieutenant? Why, you're only allowed to graduate to be a lieutenant general, and I can't even be a second lieutenant after graduation. Simon replied bluntly, and then pointed to Mingde in front of him. There is a more powerful one, Lieutenant Colonel. Mingde, who was named by Simon and cut off the nose of the plane, smiled shyly. Everywhere, it's all appreciated by Marshal Sengoku, and Mr. Kuzan just got lucky with his hard work. That's right, it's a fluke. After Hansa passed away and Loya graduated, Baruto, who was the chief of the elite battalion, shouted unwillingly, why is Mingde lieutenant colonel and I'm a captain? I'm not convinced. I'm going to duel with you. Pay attention to the attitude of your conversation with the commander, Captain Aludo. Ming shouted in a deep voice, turning his face away. And then, Aldo punched him. I pay attention to your uncle. The dog thief took a punch from me. Bah, ring-eyed thieves don't want to be mad, eat me. Ignoring the scuffles of Aldo and Mingde, Loya turned to look at Kuzan with a strange tone. They called you, Kuzan. Teacher. Ah, yes. Kuzan put his hand in Kabuto's pants, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. They are all good boys. Mr. Zephyr is not here, but someone needs to fill his place, otherwise it will hurt them too much. Heart. Clap clap clap. Loya applauded and shook his head. I really can't imagine that someone who is lazy to the point of you would take on such trouble. But. Luoya suddenly bowed heavily to Kuzan and said solemnly, thank you so much, Mr. Kuzan. Mingde and Aldo, who were scrambling, were suddenly stagnant. They also followed Loya and bowed neatly to Kuzan. "Thank you so much, Mr. Kuzan." "Ah la la, what are you doing?" Kuzan took off his blindfold and slapped Heish. "Now that you're back, I can finally go back to sleep in peace. I'll let Sengoku make up these guys. The marshals are under your banner, and in the future, you will be in charge of them, Loya-kun." "Yes, I will live up to my trust, Mr. Kuzan." "So, why am I a captain and Mingda's a lieutenant colonel?" Sitting on the threshold of the courtyard, Aludo sighed uncontrollably. "This gap is too big." "That's because your weakness is too obvious. Apart from armament hockey and iron nuggets, what else do you think you can do?" Simon's voice came from behind Aldo, interrupting his words. "But I'm strong," Arudo retorted. "As long as I get punched, Mingd has to get down." "But you're still stupid," Simon said impatiently, and then touched Aldo, pointing to the ability of the fruit to activate. Arudo, who was about to say something, only felt the clothes on his body suddenly tighten, and he pulled him to the ground, and then dragged his lump of flesh down the corridor farther and farther. "I'm what? You're in the way, you know," Simon said angrily, then came to the middle of the courtyard with a large basin and rang the bell for dinner. "It's all done, everyone come over for the banquet." "Oh." Standing beside the fence outside the courtyard, listening to the noise of the newly graduated recruits inside, Kuzan raised his head and looked at the place where the sea and the sky meet in the distance. "I suddenly understand why you take your disciples so seriously, Teacher Zephyr." This night was undoubtedly a sleepless night for the members of the elite camp. Because they graduated. Chapter 249 Fallen Admiral. 3rd. The first half of the Great Route is called Paradise by the monsters of the New World. Because most of the pirates gathered here are newcomers who have just embarked on the road of pirates, their strength level is really limited. For the pirates of the New World, they are all too weak. Moreover, most of the territory of the New World belongs to the 4 emperors. For the pirates who want to step into the New World, they do not have enough strength. Going in is completely courting death. However, this weakness, at some point, is also an advantage. Just like the current Jones, he can easily hide here without worrying about being discovered. Because those who dare to approach this island have no room for resistance in the face of his mighty power. Over time, even such a new anecdote gradually spread in the park. That is the legend that there is a moving island, floating on the sea. There is no record pointer to point to, so no one can find it. However, anyone who is fortunate or unfortunate to approach this island will be swallowed up by the island and never come back. Legend has it that it was a cannibal island. For this rumor, Zephyr frowned unhappily. "That's why I want to ask, what are you doing with these pirates?" "Waste food." From the current Zephyr's point of view, only dead pirates are good pirates, and it makes no sense for Jones to catch them and work as coolies. And if labor is needed, the former inhabitants of the Mechanic Island will suffice. In response to Zephyr's complaint, Jones shook his head with a wry smile. "Our plan is to eliminate a Shichibukai and use this as a threat to take his place. But there is no power, not enough men, I think Sengoku. The Marshal, even if you want to help us promote this matter, it is impossible. After all, I'm not a monster of Hawkeye Mahawk's level." "You're not weak, boy." Zephyr grinned while holding a cigar. "To be honest, your strength is ranked among the people I've met. Young people should be a little more confident." Zephyr first met Jones a few months ago. The two do not trust each other, so the moment they meet is an earth-shattering battle. Although Jones is a devil fruit person, the transformation effect brought by the beast language fruit is more to strengthen his physical strength. So Jones, like Zephyr, the main method of fighting is also physical art. There may not be so many special effects in the battle between two strong physique practitioners, but the power of that punch and kick is still enough to make people feel suffocated. The small island on which the two were on the battlefield shattered and sank directly after the battle, and was permanently erased from the map. It seems that he sensed the opponent's attitude from the fight, and after that, Zephyr put his mind at ease with Jones and helped him plan a plan for several people together. Of course, the important reason for Zepha's peace of mind was because he won. Jones has not yet crossed that hurdle, and there is an essential difference between him and Zepha. Coupled with the crusher installed by Zepha, the restraint effect of Halustone on him is also very obvious. Therefore, it is very unlikely for him to defeat Zepha. For Zepha's disguised encouragement, Jones smiled and said, "Confidence. I have always had it. But when I saw that kind of power that was completely irresistible, I knew one thing." "What?" Zepha curiously followed the words. In this regard, Jones smiled slightly. "Compared to your self-confidence, your strength will never be enough." "It makes sense. I really appreciate you more and more. However, you said that you can't compete with the power." Zepha was stunned for a moment, but immediately thought of something. "You are talking about Loya, right?" Speaking of which, Zepha took off the cigar from his mouth and pointed to the pirate slaves who were constantly manipulating building materials and wood below. "How on earth is Loya going to control them? Are you treating them like this now? Do you also expect them to follow you in the future?" "This is not something I know, Mr. Loya. There should be his plan, right?" Jones spread his hands and sighed helplessly. "With so many mouths every day, I am also under a lot of pressure." Just as Zepha and Jones were discussing, Loya sneezed heavily and looked at the old man in front of him speechlessly. "Let's make some sense. I've only been out for half a month, and you've brought me such a trouble. How much do you dislike my idleness, Marshal Sengoku?" "Humph." In the face of Loya's complaint, Sengoku snorted coldly. "Of the 17 lieutenant generals in the headquarters, 10 of them are out on duty, and the remaining 6 are also shouldering heavy responsibilities and stationed in the quartet. You are alone. Come on, you have the nerve to complain to me." "Huh, heavy responsibility." Luoya was shocked by Sengoku's shamelessness, and then pointed to Carp who had been sitting beside him eating senbei. "Then tell me, what kind of responsibility does this uncle have?" Seeing that Loya aimed the gun at himself, Garp quickly put away the senbei and sat upright. "I have been in charge of capturing Pirate Supernova and Fire Fist Ace back." "Well, that's it. Loya. Shameless. Ace still needs your arrest." "No, you still have the face to catch Ace. You have to say that he is really your grandson, and don't know about Roger's business. The grandson of a naval hero became a pirate, and it makes sense that you are going to catch him back. However, Ace is Roger's son. Under this premise, no one should interfere with any choice made. Just like Sengoku and Kuzan didn't make an effort to get rid of Zepha, the sea man, he has to decide his own path." But no matter how shameless Garp is, what Sengoku said really requires people to go to sea immediately, or wait for the other party to go far away and face the vast and boundless sea. Even the Navy will be helpless. So, picking up the document on the desktop, Loya stood up. "Okay, you are the boss, you are of high rank. As a junior shin, it is understandable for me to work hard. However, for a rear admiral, why would he choose to betray?" Loya said softly. Then he spread out the document and carefully observed the contents. It was a document of a naval soldier, which recorded the soldier's life experience and the content of each mission in detail, so that Loya could clearly know everything about the other party. However, for other things on the document, Loya didn't care. When he saw the name next to the 1-inch color photo, the dusty memory was revealed little by little. Dies Drake. If this name is not familiar to everyone, then he has another name, although it is not called this one yet. X Drake. One of Luffy's 12 pirate supernovas in the same year. The big pirate with a bounty of 220 million Bailey. And this Drake, there is another name that everyone is familiar with. Fallen Admiral. To find this site, please search for 6 Mao, or enter the URL. Dragon's Wave Roll. Chapter 250, A Betrayal of Tradition by the Navy. Fourth more. It is said that the Navy is really a magical organization, betrayer, or because of the theory that people who leave the Navy are really different from each other because of the theory. There are really all ages, and this topic can never be avoided. When was the earliest time? Loya no longer wanted to study. Just looking at the recent Grand Pirate era, that is, 20 years after Roger's death, there have been 3 serious betrayals in the Navy. This still only counts the headquarters of the Navy and does not count the various branches. In terms of influence, the first place is unquestionable. That is the hero of the Navy, the son of Tekken Garp, the founder and leader of the Silencer Army, Monkey D. Drago. It was an unknown history. What happened at that time made Drago, a rookie in the Navy, defect from the Navy, and Loya didn't know either. It was impossible for him to ask, because it was about the Silencer Army's shocking muddy waters, and the smart Loya didn't bother to make a show. But judging from Drago's behavior of creating the Silencer Army with the intention of overthrowing the world government's rule, the reason for this can still be figured out a little. It is estimated that the Tianlong people did not run away. And Ni, of course, is Loya's current teacher, the former admiral of the Navy, the Black-Wrist Zephyr. The reason why his influence ranks after Dorag is because of their sphere of influence. Abandoning the name Zephyr and turning into an avenger of Z, what he wants to do is to detonate 3 endpoints and completely destroy the entire New World. And Dorag, what he wants to do, is to fundamentally solve the source of everything, the world government. This is a matter that spreads to the whole world. No, it is not a spread, but a matter that envelopes the whole world within the scope of the bomb explosion. Then, the third one is the one Loya is holding now. In the future, the famous, fallen navy, in the sea, one of the 12 supernovas in 1520 of the Sea Garden calendar. X Drake. To sum up, Loya rolled his dead fish eyes and complained, "By the way, Marshal Sengoku. Is there a tradition of betrayal in our navy? Is this the first time you have met as a marshal?" Sengoku. A few minutes later. After punching and kicking down, Sengoku, who was in a good mood, gave a direct order to Loya, who had a bruised nose and a swollen face. "Lieutenant General Loya. In the name of the Marshal of the Navy Headquarters, I order you to set sail immediately and bring the sinner Diaz Drake to justice. Make no mistake." "Yes." Activating the facial muscles, the bruises on the face dissipated at a speed visible to the naked eye, and soon disappeared. Meeting Sengoku's serious gaze, Loya grinned. "Is it angry?" Sengoku thought about it carefully, then nodded heavily. "Life or death?" Waiting for Roha to leave, Garp finally stopped eating the senbei and said with a frown. "This time, I guess Drake won't come back." With Loya's strength and consistent style, since he has Sengoku's permission, Drake's fate can be imagined. Moreover, Drake left on the warship of the headquarters. The generals above the Lieutenant General of the Navy Headquarters know that every warship of the headquarters has a backhand specially left by the Navy, so that they can control the position of the warship at any time. To facilitate support and screening. Yeah, it won't come back. Unlike Karp, Sengoku knows more. Jones's recruitment action during this period can't be hidden from him, if Loya really finds Drake. To live or to perish, that is the question. This time, you can go with me. In the past 6 months, the elite battalion has completed the rectification and became completely independent from the recruit battalion. Correspondingly, this courtyard that belonged to the elite camp was also taken back. Then, led by Vice Admiral Loya, and with the joint application of dozens of admirals and colonels, this courtyard was reserved by everyone and became a temporary gathering place for a group of people. At this moment, in the courtyard, Loya said casually while eating Minnie's special pan-fried steak. "Even after graduation, Simon and the others still need time to experience and grow. And if the opponent is that Drake, it can just put pressure on them without causing a fatal threat to them. For a small number of people, there is indeed no fatal threat." Simon's head was the brightest, and when he heard Loya's words, he immediately understood. Nodding, he slapped away the black hand that Aludo had stretched out across the boundary, and put the last piece of steak into his bowl with a fork. "I see, then tomorrow I'll apply for a warship. As a second lieutenant, no, including Mingd, who is a lieutenant colonel, does not have his own exclusive warship. If they want to go to sea to perform tasks, they need to apply to the above and wait for approval. After all, the demon slaughtering order only dispatched 10 warships. Well, I can use positions to mobilize 3 warships, including the wave breaker. Loya said while eating steak, but considering that this mission is mainly tracking, it is best for you to apply for 3 more warships. Any more and supplies become a problem. Quote, I have never seen Zupao or eaten pork before. After coming to the Navy for so long, Loya has become more and more familiar with the ways of the Navy. The next day, the weather was sunny and cloudless, which was a rare good weather. Although on the Great Route, the weather in one place does not mean that the next voyage will be safe, but it is undoubtedly a good sign. In front of the fortress of the naval headquarters, at the huge port, a series of 5 warships lined up, waiting to set off. Due to the urgency of the matter, Simon and others' applications were submitted in the morning and passed in less than an hour. This is an order issued by Sengoku directly intervening, and all actions must make way for Loa and the others. After all, it was a humiliating betrayal. There are traitors in the dignified Navy headquarters, which makes the Navy completely unable to lift their heads these 2 days. A dignified presence could be seen everywhere, as if a dark cloud shrouded the sky above the headquarters, making people breathless. Continued silence until Loya and others appeared in the port, which was a little more popular. That's Lieutenant General Loya. It's Lieutenant General Loya and the monsters from the elite camp. That's great. With Lieutenant General Loya, he will surely be able to catch the traitor back. Countless soldiers looked at them with reverence and excitement. Although the unreliability of this Lieutenant General may be second only to Lord Garp in the Navy, his strength is obvious to all. The member of the betrayer's family, dies, is just a mere Major General. As long as he meets him, he can't escape. Standing on the stone platform in the port, Loya turned around, nodded to the big guys who were watching from a distance, and then issued an order. All on board. Let's go. Chapter 251 Target, Drum Island. 5th more. Hey, I said Loya, why on earth do you think Drake betrayed the Navy? Standing beside Loya, Simon, who stayed up all night, was puzzled, and finally asked this question. Drake's father, Diaz Barreros, was also a former admiral and was deeply admired and trusted by Drake. But many years ago, he defected from the Navy and became a pirate. Then, when Drake was 19 years old, Barreros died in a birdcage farce in Doflamingo, while Drake was protected in the chaos by Lieutenant General Crane rushing all the way, and then became a Navy. It stands to reason that with the negative teaching material of his father there, Drake should be on the same side as the Navy. But even after rummaging through the family information, Simon couldn't find a reason why Drake would defect from the Navy. Even if he wanted to take revenge on Doflamingo, wouldn't he have a better chance in the Navy? For this answer, we can only wait until they really arrest him in the future. Maybe we can know Akatsuki from Drake's mouth. Why? Loya glanced at Simon and said, to be honest, I don't care about this. Also, I don't think you should care about this either. As a soldier, just follow orders. Ah, you're right. Simon choked for a moment, then smiled relievedly. There's really nothing to get into. But, why do I always feel that there is something I didn't expect? Loya. Looking at Loya's tall and straight back, Simon frowned and thought. Is Loya really ignorant? The answer is of course no. At least, he knew something on the surface that explained the reason for Drake's betrayal. According to the records, a few days ago, the pacifists of Vegapunk made a staged progress, and they could soon be mass-produced and officially put into use. However, with the continuous improvement of the work, Vegapunk, a scientist who has been leading the world for 500 years, is not satisfied with the existing level of pacifists and wants to further strengthen its power. But the problem also followed. He even transplanted the power of the Admiral and Chiwahai on the pacifist. In this sea, who is more powerful than the two? The head of the 4 emperors, known as the strongest Whitebeard in the world. Not to mention that Whitebeard himself is half dead because of the ability to shake the fruit, Vegapunk is not confident that his pacifist mechanical structure has reached the point where it can be compared with Whitebeard's body. Of course, if he really thinks so, Whitebeard's bloodline factor is not so easy to obtain, and most of them will be directly rejected by Sengoku and Stillborn. So correctly, with this reminder of the idea, Vegapunk noticed the pacifist's most serious weakness right now. That is the ability to resist. It is true that the pacifists with special bionic mechanical structures are not weak in fighting ability now, just look at the supernovas in the original book who deal with the hardships. However, machinery is always machinery, and the more precise the instrument, the more fragile it is. A human body with the same strength is definitely more resistant to beating than a machine. So, in order to solve this problem, Vegapunk's attention turned to Drake. As the animal system in the devil fruit, it is still the ancient Tyrannosaurus rex fruit known for its rough skin and thick flesh. Vegapunk didn't want to go to the sea to find a suitable fruit ability again. Most importantly, Drake is only a major general. In the face of his invitation, the other party has no right to refuse. At first, Drake thought it was the same as General Kizaru. He had nothing to do with the test, and it was enough to take some blood samples. However, following the discovery that day, Drake fled the Navy headquarters the next day. That day happened to be the day when the king's Chihuahua, Bao Kun, bear underwent human transformation. According to Vegapunk's explanation, the operation performed at that time happened to mechanize the internal organs of the bear. Loya didn't understand what black technology was at work here, but he could understand Drake's mood at the time. To see the dignified Chihuahua being dissected and then replaced with mechanical parts, this is undoubtedly a very terrifying thing for him, who is also an experimental subject. If it was replaced by himself, Loya felt that he should also run. However, he will try first to see if he can kill that lunatic first and benefit the society. But these are things to come later, and now their main goal is to find Drake first. A month later, the first half of the Great Route. On the Blue Sea, 6 warships cut through the sea and moved forward rapidly. The blue sky, Shirakumo, and the sea surface are beautifully drawn. A few white seagulls with a little black followed behind the warship, flapping their wings lazily with the help of the airflow brought by the warship, hovering in the air. From time to time, a few crisp tweets seemed to be asking for food from the warship. However, even Loya, a non-indigenous traveler who lives in the basin area, knows that these beautiful and well-behaved seagulls are actually the ugliest gangsters. They are now acting like a spoiled brat to you, and in fact, they are always ready to snatch your food. Except for the idiots who have no worries about food and clothing, no one will have a good impression of these little robbers. Coincidentally, there is not a foolish white sweet on the warship. So, spider web beam. With Simon's soft drink, the white and slender special silk threads were fired out layer by layer. It's really layered up. Because these threads did not fly out in a straight line, on the contrary, they were launched sideways. Then stretched left and right to a certain length, and then folded back, layer by layer toward the seagulls in the air. When these silk threads reached the predetermined position, they quickly opened with a bang, and a huge spider web suddenly appeared in the air. When the seagulls had no time to escape, they suddenly tightened and put them all in the big net. Loya, do you think deep-fried or Yuhi grilled is better? Holding the silk thread extending behind the spider web, Simon shouted loudly at Loya, who was sleeping on Pippi Shrimp's back. Hearing the question, Loya raised his eyelids, and the invisible magic was agitated, but the very slight voice surpassed the noise of the sea breeze and waves, and clearly fell into Simon's ears. The voice was speaking. Look at our coat of arms and ask me this question again. Simon looked up at the open sails on the warship, then lowered his head and said, I think it's still Yuhi cooking or soup. No, frying. Received. For the interaction between the two, what else can the ordinary soldiers accompanying them say? Anyway, you are the boss, you just have to be happy. At this moment, a hurried footstep sounded from far to near, and soon came to Simon's side. Report. Second Lieutenant Simon, received news from the headquarters. Headquarters. Simon blinked, suddenly remembered something, and his face became serious. Speak. Yes. After the messenger saluted, he took out the document and handed it over to Simon, and said at the same time, the headquarters has confirmed that the target person, Dees Drake, appeared on Drum Island a day ago, and it is only a day's voyage away from us. Drum Island. Either someone is injured, or they need to replenish supplies, and there should be time. Simon looked up at Loya and saw that the other party was nodding at him, so he gave the order. The whole army turned and marched towards Drum Island. Yes. Lying on the special leather sofa, Loya took out a piece of fruit and threw it into his mouth, chewing and swallowing the core together. Drum Island, so I can see the mascot. As soon as he thought of that cute thing, Loya cheered up. However, he suddenly frowned and thought, wait, if they continue to escape, don't we have to turn around? Well, I remember, Jones is in this sea, right? Saying that, Loya took out the phone bug and dialed it. Chapter 252 block. The 6th update. Ask for a reward. Ask for a monthly pass. Ask for a subscription. Ask for a recommendation. Help stop the Navy traitor Drake. What the hell is this mission? On the newly born Turtle Island, in the castle once built by Ratchet, Jones looked at the phone bug in front of him with a bewildered expression. Even if it was just a simulated look, he could feel the scorching gaze of his master, and Jones had goosebumps all over his body. By the way, don't I still need to hide my identity? You asked me to block that. Yes, Drake, wouldn't that expose me to the world? After the demise of the draconian family Athos, Jones lost his goal of revenge and almost fell into depression for a time. It was only with Minnie's encouragement that he regained his strength. Coupled with the previous communication between Zephyr and him, he deeply understood how big a game the young man who defeated him was playing. And most importantly, after winning this chess game, the result he got was exactly what he wanted. So he is now wholeheartedly assisting Loya and helping him win. However, for such an important matter, the other party suddenly asked him to face a naval traitor, which made Jones puzzled. That, Captain, I'll take the liberty to ask. Jones said hesitantly, does this Drake have any deep hatred with you? Ah, why ask this? Loya scratched his head strangely and said, what do you want to say? No, I just want to say, what kind of hatred is it that makes you decide to let me come forward? Jones sighed helplessly. You know that once the news that I am alive is leaked, the Navy will will you be held accountable? Is it worth it? Hey, so you're worried about this? Luoya suddenly realized, clapped his hands and smiled. Don't worry, for a mere Drake, it's not worth affecting our original plan. You only need to be responsible for blocking them and not letting any of them. Just run away. When I get to Drum Island, you just leave without showing your face, so our plans won't be affected in any way. Quote. Is that really the case? Jones muttered worriedly, but since Loya had said it to this point, what else could he say when his subordinates had to act according to the order? After notifying Jones, Loya sat cross-legged on the sofa tied to Pippi Shrimp's back, looking expectant. Oh hoo, the real living chopper. I really want to see you soon. Although he was a self-proclaimed senior Hokage fan in his previous life, it is absolutely impossible to say that he has not watched the other two big migrant manga. Moreover, in these three migrant workers, each one has at least one character he likes. Among them, in the unfinished, Grim Reaper, his fan is the Soul. That's right, it's the lecherous puppet lion. In the Hokage series that doesn't want to complain, his fan is the Toad Dragon. This kind of fat person really wants to pinch at a glance. The type is completely irresistible. Yes, there is also the fairy tale that Loya was obsessed with and became the foundation of his life. He is a fan of the Canis Minor's Star Spirit crew, the weak little white ding. In the One Piece world where Loya came through, one of his fans, in terms of variety, is similar to the above three. Because they are not human. That's right, in the world of One Piece, Loya's favorite character is Tony Chopper. Although it is only 2 years after the big event, there is only a bounty of 100 Bailey. But I just love it. When I think of myself, I will see the character I like with my own eyes, and it is still alive, not the one drawn by others. Even Loya, who has been practicing on Jungwoo for a long time, can't help but get excited at this moment. Also, pray for Drake not to leave Drum Island before Loya arrives. Otherwise, the anger of the original fans can really destroy the world. The first half of the Great Route, Drum Island. 4 years from now, no, almost 5 years ago, the bastard king of Drum Island, Valbo, enacted a law. Let all doctors serve him alone, and if he disobeys, he will be imprisoned, resulting in only one doctor left in the whole country. As a result, the once famous medical power Drum Country has declined and has never recovered. The decline of a country is not only the poverty of the people, but also the change of status. If it is said that many years ago, the king of the Drum Kingdom, who was a medical power, could still attend the World Conference and slapped Princess Weiwei, then now he can't even get in the eyes of the world government. Kakuzu, the other party, directly removed him from the conference roster. In other words, disguised culling. For example, in the upcoming New World Conference in 1518, the Holy Land Marijoa did not even take his seat into account. He has turned a dignified medical country into a city that is not as big as it is now. What constructive proposals can this kind of thing make at the World Conference? The world government also loves face very much. So, when Drake came here, he suddenly felt that things were a little tricky. He is just a major general, taking advantage of the opportunity that most of the lieutenant generals in this headquarters are incapable of being able to escape from the headquarters. But in the face of the pursuit order issued by the Navy, after fighting all the way, he was already seriously injured and exhausted. In the information he had seen before, the Drum Country was originally a country with developed medical care, and he wanted to take a break here to reorganize his spirit and continue the road of escape. But, what? You said there is no doctor here. Drake was wearing a thick bandage on his chest, and the bandage wet with seawater revealed a terminally ill cold and faint bloodshots. He grabbed the chef of the restaurant viciously and brought his face close. Try again. The middle-aged chef was really about to cry, holding Drake's right hand that stuck his collar and begging, "Hi. Navy, my lord, we really don't have a doctor here. Everyone knows, a few years ago, Walbo promulgated a new law. Our doctor either ran away or was thrown into prison by him. Even if we want to see a doctor, we need to go to the palace and ask Lord Walbo for mercy." Quote. Mr. Drake. No, Captain. It looks like there really isn't a doctor here, and it's been like that in several towns in a row. The speaker was Drake's former lieutenant who facilitated Drake's defection. Their original plan was to escape back to the North Sea to escape the pursuit of the Navy headquarters. However, in the face of the pursuit troops sent by various branches along the way, Drake's plan suffered a serious setback from the beginning. The X-scar on the chest came from the cooperation of the 3 major generals of the branch. Although he finally killed one person and successfully escaped, the wound brought unforeseen obstacles to his escape. What's more terrible is that according to the information sent by the spies left along the way, the 17th Lieutenant General of the Navy headquarters, the terrifying monster newcomer Ice Dragon Loya, officially joined the hunt. Drake knew very well that the guy who was able to fight with the General Kizaru for so long was definitely not something he could handle. Once he was caught up by the other side, the consequences would be self-evident. But if he continues to escape now, his fate is also death. After listening to the adjutant's words, Drake let go of the chef angrily and looked up at the most conspicuous landmark building in the Drum Country. On that towering lonely mountain is the palace of the King Valbo here. Now the doctors from the whole kingdom are gathered there, and if they want to heal their wounds, they have to go there. A little busy today, tomorrow will be delivered on Friday. Like the title, that's it. At this time, Dashu is still waiting for the last dessert at the Western restaurant outside, and then, he will go to the movies later in the evening, and then go to the full set. That, Embarrassing, isn't it? First of all, let me say that my chapter today is really coded. But old book friends know that if Dashu does not check it a few times, and changes the chapter of 1980 words to 22,002,500 words, it will not be published. So, I would rather take a day off than send out unmodified and checked chapters to cheat money. Well, tomorrow. Today's 2 shifts plus tomorrow's 2 shifts plus the addition of drunken voice bosses, a total of 5 shifts. Thank you for your understanding. Chapter 253. There is a bear before there is Laban, the first one. Great root, drum country. The mountains in the distance are stacked and covered with a layer of snow, like the monstrous white waves rolled up by the sea. Walking into the snow, stepping on it with your foot, it makes a creaking sound, and it is soft, making it easy for people to lose their center of gravity. In this piece of white, several figures are holding mountaineering picks and slowly move forward on this rugged mountain road. The leader seemed to be seriously injured, and every few steps he took, he would stop and gasp for a while. At this time, the people behind him would look at him nervously, worried that he would fall. "Captain, let me carry you up." The speaker is Moore, Drake's former lieutenant, who has followed him all the way from the boot camp. Moore knew very well that if the injury wasn't really unbearable, the man in front of him would never have stopped to rest. "No, let's go." Drake's face was pale, and he didn't know if it was cold or he had lost too much blood. As he spoke, Drake looked up at the castle hidden in the cloudy Hefeng snow, and cut lightly. As the mountain on which the castle is located 5,000 meters high. 5,000 meters is also a very terrifying height for people in the world of One Piece. You must know that the empty island in this world is only in Beibaihai, which is only 10,000 meters away from the sea below. The place called the White Sea by the Sky Islanders is only about 7,000 meters high. Living in such a high castle, people will really have a mentality of looking down on all beings and being self-respecting. At this moment, Drake's ears moved, and he alertly greeted his subordinates to stop. "Stop, there is a situation." Although his domineering cultivation is not very good, as an animal fruit power user, the beast intuition brought by his fruit power allows him to know that something is peeping at them. After receiving Drake's warning, the rest of them drew their swords and set up their muskets, and watched the surroundings vigilantly. Drake also silently took out his saber, put it on his chest, and glanced around. Suddenly, his eyes froze, and he asked in a low voice. "Moore, did that tree over there have that much snow under its roots just now?" "Tree roots. Snow." Moore was stunned and followed Drake's line of sight. "I saw a bulging semicircular snowdrift under a plant similar to the Earth's pine, where the roots of the tree meet the ground. This snowdrift looks like someone deliberately stacked it there. It has a smooth outline and natural arc. At first glance, it is thought to be a huge dumpling. But, there aren't that many man-made objects in this snowy, inaccessible place." Click. Moore narrowed his eyes, pointed the musket over there, and pulled the trigger. Boom. Ow. The bullet propelled by the gunpowder blasted a tinge of yuhi on the snowdrift, and at the same time there was a piercing scream. Because they injured several civilians as soon as they landed on the island, they threatened them to go to the doctor immediately. With this kind of robber-like behavior, naturally no resident would kindly warn them of the danger on the snow-capped mountains. After all, Stockholm Syndrome is just an exception. So, Moore's shot was a big hit. In the shocked eyes of Drake and the others, the snowdrift slowly spread out, and then gradually stood. When it stood up completely, what appeared in front of them was a huge rabbit with a height of 3 meters. Perhaps this kind of thing can no longer be called a rabbit. The ratio of the head to the body of an ordinary rabbit is at most 1:5. As for the rabbit in front of him, the ratio of its head to its body can no longer be described as small. But combined with its massive frame, strong forelimbs and sharp claws, Kiba, Drake knows why. Because this thing does not seem to live by the head. Ow! As soon as he stood up, this Laban didn't attack Drake and the others for the first time. It first grabbed a handful of things mixed with snow and leaves and plugged the wound on its buttocks, then screamed in the sky. The huge roar resounded through the valley, causing Drake's heart to sink directly. This is not the demonstration and intimidation before launching the attack, but the cry of the gregarious animals calling for their companions. As a result, Drake stepped back decisively, pulled more and ran down the mountain quickly. "Get out, it's calling a companion." "What?" Moore's eyes widened and he turned his head suddenly. Sure enough, with the whistling of Labang, rabbit heads abruptly emerged from the calm snowfield. They first stared blankly at Laban, who kept whistling, and then the leading Laban leader got angry. Carnivores, or gregarious animals, have a very strong sense of territory. "Come to my territory and dare to hurt my subordinates, you people are so bold. Hold head high." The Laban leader roared and jumped out directly from the snowfield, shouting. Some of the rest of the Laban still don't know what happened. After all, they just woke up. The creatures on the East Island are not as active as those on the Shah Island, and the Labangs will sleep under the warm snow layer when they have nothing to do, reducing the consumption of fat. However, now that the boss has spoken, there is no need to think too much. For a time, hundreds of pairs of Yuhi's rabbit eyes were dangerously aimed at Drake and others. The next moment, countless huge white plush balls jumped out from under the snowfield and charged towards Drake and the others. "Damn it! What the hell are these things?" Drake cursed inwardly and quickened the pace of his escape. He didn't want to use his severely injured body to try Kiba's claws, and looking at the others' agile movements, he would be overtaken by the other party if he slowed down a little. "After we break, Captain, run." At the critical moment, Moore broke free from Drake's big hand, picked up the musket and aimed at Laban, who was chasing behind him. "Moore." Drake was about to say something when a scream from the front interrupted his movement. "What's the matter?" He turned his head quickly, but saw a white bear that was even bigger than the rabbits behind him, leaning on a walking stick and slowly approaching them. In addition to the huge size of the other party, the real reason for the subordinates to scream is because this bear is actually walking upright. Under the dazed eyes of everyone, Hiking Bear silently walked to a group of people, glanced at them blankly, and then nodded. Drake and the others remained motionless, for fear of disturbing this monster that was not easy to mess with at first sight. Then, Hiking Bear nodded again. Drake and others continued to remain motionless. Then, hold head high. Seeing that the other party did not do the climbing ceremony, the Hiking Bear, who felt insulted, threw away the stick angrily, slapped them at them and took a picture. The whistling wind and the shoved snowflakes told them that if I slap me down, you might die. Grass the grass. Derek cursed inwardly as he couldn't watch his subordinates being attacked, and endured the pain to activate the fruit ability. The next moment, a huge Tyrannosaurus Rex appeared on the snowfield, lowered its head and swooped into the bear paw that the Hiking Bear took. Boom. Chapter 254 Valbo's Concerns, 2nd. Snowflakes splashed and blood flowed. Although hiking bears never take the initiative to attack humans, they don't have much liking for guys who don't do mountain climbing rituals. So this slap was so powerful, even if it was an ancient species with a very hard head, the overlord Longyi, commonly known as the Iron Head, couldn't stand it. Shaking his drowsy head slightly, Drake roared, rushed up and twisted his neck, opened his big mouth full of Kiba, and bit the hiking bear fiercely. Puff! Gurgling blood immediately flowed down the wound, and the pained hiking bear screamed, raised its paw high, and then clasped the two bear paws together and slammed it down at Drake's back. Boom! This time, the blow was very real. Drake, who was biting the opponent tightly, couldn't dodge. He only felt a sweetness in his throat, and a mouthful of blood spurted out. Then bit the opponent's big mouth and could not help but let go, and staggered back. But the hiking bear wouldn't give him time to breathe. Angrily, it took a step forward, and its right palm drew an arc in the air, and slapped Drake's head heavily again. Boom, boom. Drake, who was seriously injured, could no longer stand still, and was suddenly slapped by the hiking bear and flew out, and then smashed heavily on a raised stone, smashing the entire stone into pieces. Ooh! Seeing this, the hiking bear roared loudly, showing his powerful strength to the enemies, and a savage aura came from the surface, making the rest of the crew's hearts fall into an ice cave. Even the captain was shot 2 or 3 times, so what else can they do? Only to escape. However, it was already too late. The danger is not from the hiking bears and the labongs chasing after them, but from the snowy mountains themselves. In this chaos, the loose snow was shaken down by the sound and slowly rolled along the mountain. Boom! The dull sound of thunder stopped all the creatures present, and looked blankly at the long white dragon that was rapidly moving from far to near. Countless trees and stones were buried in the blink of an eye, and then no trace of Mukuro could be seen. Even stones the size of a house were smashed to pieces by the menacing white waves, and then wrapped in countless rubble, they continued to attack them. Snow. An avalanche. Avalanche. Run. Ow. Woohoo. Faced with this punishment from nature, at this moment, whether it is human or Laban, hiking bear or whatever, seems so small. Derek, who was half unconscious, raised his eyelids hard, his face bleak. My journey has not yet begun, is it going to end here? Really, it's frustrating. Drake sighed so deeply, and in the next second, the entire team was engulfed by the avalanche. Drum Country, where the palace is located. When Drake and the others were going up the mountain, the guards had already rushed to the palace to report the fact that Drake and his group came to the Drum Country. What? Navy? Listening to the report from his subordinates, Valbo, the current king of the Drum Kingdom, suddenly stood up from his chair. Because of his fat body, this action made the subordinates who came to report the letter subconsciously take a step back, afraid that the other party would not stand firm and fall. What did the Navy come to my kingdom for? And hurt my citizens? Valbo said strangely. The Drum Country is now one of the affiliating countries of the world government. As an affiliating country, it naturally enjoys the privileges of an affiliating country. Generally speaking, if a navy wants to enter the country, it needs to report to Walbo for the application. However, the other party not only did not do so, but even injured the guards guarding the harbor, which made Valbo puzzled. After listening to his subordinate's report, the Drum Nation's affairs officer, Chromolyman, stood up and suggested to Valbo, whether they are a navy or not, they must be severely punished if they dare to make such a mess in Lord Valbo's country. Punishment. That's right, Lord Valbo, please give your order. I'll go and get them back. Jace on the side was eager to show his loyalty to Valbo when he saw Chromolyman's actions. However, Valbo did not directly agree with the two men's proposal. Although he turned the former medical power of the Drum Country into the desolate country it is now, his cruelty does not mean that he is stupid. If the other party is really a navy and is still aggressive, Valbo is a little worried, the other party is coming for him. There is no other reason, he himself understands how much the law of hunting doctors, promulgated by himself has had a great impact on the people. It's just that his personality has been like this since he was a child, and he doesn't value the people very much, thinking that if this batch is gone, it's good to find the next batch. But this does not mean that he does not know his status in the hearts of the people. This kind of thing, think about the former Drum National Guard Captain Dalton who was locked up by him. Therefore, Valbo was a little worried that this group of navies came for themselves. Don't look at the world government's protection measures for the allied countries, and do not allow the navy to interfere with other countries' regimes. But that's just a policy made for the sake of world stability. If you really want to meet a guy who is determined to drive him away, in this world where fists decide everything, Valbo doesn't think that a frivolous law can stop them. So he thought about it for a long time and said to Chromolyman and Jess, "No, let's not do anything to them yet. You two, bring someone to monitor them and see what they are trying to do. Remember, if the other party has no ill intentions, let them leave quickly. If you want supplies or something, give them to them." To be king, Valbo wasn't a real fool. In other words, any brutal leader is not stupid. After receiving Valbo's order, Chromolyman and Jace looked at each other and nodded, "Yes, Lord Valbo." Back in time, when the avalanche happened. According to the clues provided by the villagers, the two of them quickly knew the goal of Drake and others, which was the Drum King's palace on the mountain, where King Valbo was located. Because now in the entire magnetic drum country, there is only a doctor in the palace. Of course, they will not forget that there is also a doctor called the Witch, but that character is not so easy to deal with, and the residents of the town are not interested in deliberately setting up a trick for Drake and others to find it. On the one hand, they sent people to return to the palace from the other direction to report the news. On the other hand, the two led the team to follow the hounds with a keen sense of smell, hanging from a distance all the way, and followed Drake and others to climb the snow-capped mountains. If it's just to find a doctor, then Lord Valbo should easily dismiss them. Jace guessed that, after all, the other party was a navy, and depending on the equipment and clothing, it was still from the Marine Fedor's navy in the navy headquarters. No matter how autocratic and dictatorial Valbo is, and his ideas are extreme, he should not be stupid enough to embarrass them. And as they have followed Valbo to the World Conference, they are well informed. The two of them could tell from the epaulets on each other that this was still a rear admiral. It's not that he is not confident in their King Valbo, but that they both understand that being able to become a major general in the naval headquarters must be no small matter. Even in serious injuries, Valbo may not really be able to defeat the opponent. Cromariman was about to answer when his face suddenly changed. Not good. It's Avalanche. What? Jace turned his head back in horror, and sure enough, a white dragon was surging down the mountain, destroying everything in its path. It seems that we don't have to think about how to deal with them. Cromariman said grimly, then turned around and ordered his entourage to return. This kind of avalanche, no one can come back alive. Chapter 255. A penny beats the hero, the third one. Really, was the movement just now really an avalanche? Valbo sat on the throne of the palace and said while eating food. As a person with the ability to swallow fruit, he didn't have the option of chewing food. Whether it was a roast suckling pig with a thick waist or an apple the size of a fist, he threw it directly into his mouth and swallowed it. After listening to Jess and Cromariman's report, Valbo breathed a sigh of relief. No matter whether the other party came for him or not, under such an avalanche, he would definitely not be able to survive. The best way to solve trouble is not to deal with it quickly, but to make the source of the trouble disappear. That's what it's about now. Since they are all dead, let's laugh at the other party's warships. Valbo smiled and said, Jess, take someone to bring back the warships at the port. Yes, Lord Valbo. The other party left behind on the warship was just a few small shrimps. Since the Major General was not there, Jace had the confidence to complete the task beautifully. Strange ceiling. Etc. Drake suddenly widened his eyes and rolled over to sit up. But as he moved, a piercing pain struck, causing him to curl up directly. No. A slightly shrill voice sounded, with a bit of hesitation, a bit of anger, and a bit of fear. Your wounds haven't healed yet, lie down. Ah, am I being rescued? Thinking like this, Drake endured the pain, turned his head with difficulty, and looked at the other side of the hospital bed. Strange, why no one? Looking around, it should be an ordinary hut, except for the bottles and jars placed in the corner, it is no different from ordinary people. But just because this is just an ordinary hut, and you can see from the beginning to the end at a glance, Drake is strange. What about the person who just spoke? At this moment, a thin and graceful figure pushed in the door, holding a bottle of wine whose label could not be seen. Yeah, it turns out that you woke up. Grumpy. After taking 2 gulps of wine, the visitor continued, Tisk tisk, you really deserve to be a rear admiral. I'm still wondering if you can survive. After all, the injuries on your body would have already died of ordinary people. Woke up so soon. To be honest, if you just look at the indescribable part below the neck, Drake will think this person is a big beauty. But after hearing her voice, and seeing the other person's appearance, Drake only thought that the other side was a dynamic ant. No, old woman. But no matter what it was, listening to the other party's tone, it was a fact that he was saved by her. So, Drake reluctantly lifted the quilt and wanted to go down to the ground to thank the other party. "Did you save me, really? Can't come down." It was the high-pitched voice just now, and Drake's movements froze. Looking at the source of the voice, he blinked in confusion. "Ah, this is the civet cat." "I'm not a civet cat, I'm a reindeer." Tony Chobajian Kiba, who was studying medicine with Dr. Clea, roared, then suddenly woke up and ran to hide behind Clea's legs in a panic. "It's just that it's hiding in the wrong direction. A head is indeed hidden, but the whole body is exposed." Watching Chopper's performance, Drake was even more confused. He felt that he should still be very weak, so he had hallucinations in front of him. Otherwise, why is a civet cat? "No, reindeer can talk." Seeing Drake's expression more often, Kurha explained without waiting for him to ask a question, "Chopper is a reindeer that ate the fruit of everyone. It's not surprising that he can speak." Gollum. Taking another sip of wine, Kurha shook the bottle, looked at it, and then said to Drake. "But even though it's just a reindeer, his medical skills are very good. You see, the wound on your body was bandaged by him, which is very good, right?" "Baga, even if you praise me like that, I won't be happy." "You idiot, hee. Reindeer. Doctor." Looking at the little guy who was wriggling happily at Kurha's feet, Drake smiled and nodded sincerely. "Thank you so much, Dr. Chopper." Quote. "Baga, ba. I won't be happy if you say that." Chopper's twist is even more exaggerated, and the smile on his face will even be infected with the stone. The same is true for Drake. Looking at Chopper's smile, he suddenly relaxed. But immediately, he thought of his subordinates. Those are all brothers who are willing to follow him to give up their Navy status and bear the chase together. Immediately, Drake asked nervously, "Doctor, where are my brothers?" "Ah, are you asking me for the secret of eternal youth?" Drake. "No, not at all." "Oh, you said them." Kurha pointed to another bed in the room, and did not answer Drake's question directly. "There are only two cases for the patient to disappear from my eyes. One is to recover, the other is to recover. Is death." Looking at his adjutant Moore lying on the hospital bed over there, Drake's expression darkened. "Ah, is that so? Thank you, doctor." "No thanks." Kuleha pulled over the chair and sat down with a smile on his face. "After all, this is not a welfare institution, and there is a charge for saving people. You came aboard the warship that stopped at the Big Corner, right? The Navy must be rich, right? By the way, how did you come up with the idea of Navy equals rich people?" Drake looked sullen and complained, "You are talking about scum in the Navy, maggots in the Army. As a Major General of the headquarters, I am not that rich." At this point, Drake was stunned and said with a wry smile, "And I'm not a Navy anymore, where's the money coming from?" Because the escape plan was made hastily, Drake simply didn't have the time and energy to prepare the treasure. He has no plans to create a pirate group yet, he just wants to escape back to the North Sea and get out of the sight of the Navy. In other words, no money. Kurha glanced at the empty wine bottle on the ground, her eyes suddenly becoming dangerous. "This, really not." Swoosh. Boom. A wood-chopping axe the size of a head slashed past Drake's ear and slashed heavily on the head of the hospital bed. Derek's body trembled when the crisis hit him. He didn't even see the speed of the other party just now. "This doctor is so strong." Bringing his face close to Drake, Dr. Kurha's eyes shone eerily behind his sunglasses. "As I said, this is not an orphanage. Since I don't have any money, I'll leave something from you. Mr. Major General." "No, the former Mr. Navy." Gollum. Drake's eyes shifted slightly, and he glanced at the head of the hospital bed that was cut in two by an axe. The hairs on his back stood upside down, and he was speechless for a long time. Chapter 256 The Legendary Cannibal Island, 4th More. The poor, innocent, and never-before-seen Chopper was stunned when Kurha took out the big axe. He hid helplessly behind the chair and looked at his teacher in horror. Angry Dr. Dolly, So scary. Of course, it evaded again. In the face of the murderous old woman doctor, Drake only felt a chill from the tailbone to the back of his head, which made him wake up a lot. Disagree. Seeing that Drake didn't speak, Kurha smiled dangerously. That's easy, I've used a lot of precious medicinal herbs to bandage your wounds. Since you can't get the money, I'll hurry up. Scrape off the medicine, maybe you can save some more. While talking, Kurha let go of the axe and walked towards the hospital bed where Moore was lying. As an animal system, or a rare ancient species of ability, Drake knows his physique is powerful. Now even without the help of medicine, he only needs to rest for a while and his wounds will heal. But Moore can't. He is just an ordinary human being. Even if he has been trained, he is just a stronger human being. Once Kurha stops Moore's medicine, it's unknown whether he will wake up or not. Therefore, Drake spoke decisively, preventing Kurha from removing the bandage on Moore. Please wait. Kurha turned her head and asked with raised eyebrows, why, do you want to give money? But the next moment, Drake's action made her look congealed. Swish. The axe kept by the bed was grabbed by Drake and held up high. The sharp axe blade shone with the unique luster of steel under the light. Drake held the axe high, but the target was not Kurha and Chopper, but his right hand on the bed. He looked at Kurha and pleaded, I'll leave this hand to you, so please, save him. Then, the axe fell towards his hand without hesitation. Looking at the posture, Drake was definitely not joking. He really wanted to chop off his hand. This scene was imprinted in Chopper's young mind, and he closed his eyes in fear, not daring to look at the bloody scene for a while. Ding! Suddenly, a crisp sound echoed in the empty hut. With the light sound of something breaking, Chopper looked over timidly. Then, he saw the broken axe in Drake's hand. It's true that the axe is broken. An axe made of steel, starting from a curved center, and leaving a smooth cut there. The back half of the axe had already cut into the bed, leaving a deep cut in the bed. It is conceivable that if it hadn't broken, the other part of it would have now cut off Drake's arm. Drake blinked, turned his head away, and looked at the cut axe and the small kitchen knife from nowhere. This is it. Kurha withdrew her right hand that threw out the kitchen knife, pacing to the cabinet, and took out a bottle of wine to open again. To be able to sacrifice to this extent for your companions, precious medicinal herbs are not a waste. Is that so? Derek breathed a sigh of relief, his eyes darkened, and he passed out on the bed again. Duo, Dr. Dolly Seeing that there was no tragedy, Chopper cautiously got out from behind the chair, looked at Drake, who was lying on the bed, and then looked at Dr. Kuriha. To Chopper's eyes, Kurha took a sip of wine and grinned. Chopper, you will definitely meet in the future, this kind of companion who can be truly entrusted and trusted. Now, they will be handed over to you for treatment. Yes. A day later, in the private clinic of Dr. Kurha, near the small town of Geistar. The reawakened Drake squatted beside the boiler and watched Chopper decoct animal devil fruit. The biggest enhancement to the ability person is here. It makes the ability person's physique different from ordinary people, and the resilience is several times higher. With Kurha's precious medicinal herbs, Drake can get out of bed in one day. Of course, Moore, who is still in bed, couldn't do it. It will take at least a month for the 3 ribs that were interrupted by Laban to grow back. But now that time is running out, they can't be allowed to linger like this any longer. Dr. Chopper, we really have to go now. Drake pleaded with a wry smile. We had to stay here because we were chased and killed, and now those people should be almost here. I can't stay here any longer. And, it's going to get you in trouble too. Loya's methods are well known in the world, and it is not an exaggeration to say a word of cruelty to the enemy. So in Drake's view, if he is caught up by the other party, his savior will probably be in trouble. Is it so scary? Chopper had a shocked face, but then he also frowned. But Dr. Dolly won't agree with you to leave. She never allows the patient to leave until the patient is cured. Unless what? Drake looked at Chopper expectantly. Unless the patient dies. Cough, cough, cough. On the hospital bed, Moore, who was lying on the bed, almost stood up when he heard this sentence. Drake is also full of black lines, thinking that you will have no friends if you are so honest, little doctor. But what Chopper said was also a fact. With yesterday's experience, Drake was not interested in trying to escape. At this moment, the door of the clinic was pushed open heavily, and the wind and snow couldn't wait to get in through the crack of the open door, making the warm cabin become icy cold. It wasn't until Kurha closed the door again that the temperature in the room climbed back up again. That's right, Chopper. Kurha held the ingredients and a mention of wine on the table. The patient who can leave my Dr. Kurha will either recover or die. Do you want to leave? Yes, but it looks like you only have one choice. Drake, forget it, since you can't escape, let's fight. That's right. Kuleha took out the ingredients in the bag, placed them on the table, and greeted, Chopper, wash your hands and prepare for dinner. Yes, Dr. Dolly. I'll come after I have prepared this medicine. Looking at the two saviors who were busy, Drake was at a loss. Is there anything I can help? You. Kurha glanced at him, then pointed out the window. You should think about how to meet the enemy later. Look at the things outside. That thing has been swimming around our island for several times. Quote. Things. Drake blinked and came to the window of the hut. It was pitch black outside. Not even a single star could be seen. Nothing, Doctor. Oh, that must be the other party who just swam over. Kurha said indifferently. After all, the other party's body is as big as the Drum Kingdom, so naturally you can't see anything outside the window. Drum Country. So big. Gollum. Drake and Moore looked at each other, suddenly remembering the rumors they heard along the way. Don't you mean that the one wandering outside is the legendary Cannibal Island? Chapter 257 The Mysterious Dr. Dory _ The legendary Cannibal Island. No one knows what kind of island it is. All I know is that it was a huge island that appeared on the Great Route half a year ago and wandered around. Anyone who dares to approach, be it a navy or a pirate, will be eaten by it and will never return. At first, Drake thought that this was just a joke made by ignorant people in the first half of the Great Route who regarded some giant sea kings as islands. But with the experience he had witnessed once, he was convinced of the legend. It was a terrifying aura coming from the pavement. It was encountered one day when the warship led by Drake passed through a sea area and fell into the fog at sea and could not tell the direction. In the endless fog, the advancing warship was suddenly bounced off the sea. Fortunately, the naval warship was not the kind of wooden sailboat of ordinary pirates, which prevented the disintegration after the fall. At that time, Drake thought he had hit a wave or some kind of rock, and was standing on the deck to check the situation. Then, he saw a huge shadow, clinging to the warship, slowly moving over. Through the thick fog, he vaguely saw the lush vegetation exposed behind the shadows. The warship with the broken mast had not started the turbine, so Drake could assure that the warship had stopped moving. It really is a moving island. Because of that meeting, Drake finally believed in that legend. Out of vigilance, Drake did not let people go to the island to check the situation. After identifying the direction, he drove out of the foggy sea all the way. This story tells us, when traveling in foggy weather, remember to honk your horn when you drive slowly, and turn on your warning lights, old drivers. Because of Loya's orders, Jones, who is always looking for places to hide through seabirds and fish, said, "Don't blame me for this, okay? That is to say, is this island with us now?" Drake stared blankly at the darkness outside the window, not knowing what to say. Cannibal Island. Help, Dr. Dolly. I'm going to be eaten. Chopper was startled, and crawled to the bottom of the bed in panic. This time, in terms of direction, he was hiding in the right direction. However, he only hid his head under the bed, and his body was still fully exposed. The legendary man-eating island. With a kitchen knife in one hand, he split the ingredients swiftly. The other hand held the wine bottle and took a sip from time to time. Kurha looked out the window, opened her mouth and said with a smile, "Hey, I really want to know what new herbs are on it." Facing Kurha, who had some problems with his concerns, Drake couldn't help but complain, Hey, the other party has circled around us so many times, now is not the time to be joking, Doctor. This is not the time for jokes, Lord Valbo. Chromolyman anxiously rubbed his explosive head and walked around in front of Valbo. The Royal Iron Barrel Crown 7-shot iron cannons have not been refurbished for a long time, no matter whether they can still be used or not, and now even firing at the opponent may not work, it will only anger that unknown monster. The name of Cannibal Island may be little known in the New World in the second half of the Great Route, but it is famous in the first half of Paradise, especially in the country of Magnetic Drum, which is not far from Upside Down Mountain. For the sake of safety, he would never agree to Valbo's proposal to bombard the opponent with the Royal Iron Barrel Crown 7-shot gun cannons. Now people just swim around the island, and the waves that they bring up have raised the coastline a bit, and countless boats have been hit by the huge waves and instantly become fragmented. If nothing else, if the island gets angry, the entire Magnetic Drum country will be doomed if the huge body collides with it. It doesn't work either, so what do you say? Valbo sat back on the throne, took out a musket, and gulped it down. Now he has nothing to do, even if he wants to escape. Now not only are the winds and waves rushing outside, the ship can't go out to sea, but the other party is obviously eyeing the drum country. Although I don't know what attracts it here, it is obvious that the other party doesn't want to leave for a while. Facing Valbo's abandonment, Chromoryman and Jace looked at each other helplessly, but couldn't come up with a good solution. After a long time, Jace whispered, "Then, shall we let someone go to the opposite island to see it? Now that it has stopped in the sea outside the town of Guy Star in the north, it should be no problem to land on the island." That's Cannibal Island, Jace. Although Chromoryman also thought of what Jace said, when he thought of the other party's name, he dismissed the idea. Who are you going to send to death? Are you yourself? No, of course not, Jace explained nervously, for fear that Valbo would let himself go. Then, he smiled slyly and said, "If we want a candidate, don't we have a suitable one in our cell?" Hearing this, both Chromoryman and Valbo were taken aback. Who is it? Former guard captain, Dalton. Hey, Captain, I've found Drake. Sitting on the top of the mechanical castle, Jones held a special telescope made by Ratchet with one hand, watching the scene in the cabin in the woods. Besides him, there is an energetic old woman, and a civet cat who always cooks. Oh yes, there is another one lying on the hospital bed over there. It should be Drake's crew. Old woman and Tanuki, it should be Dr. Kurha and Chopper. The warship advancing at full speed. Next door Pippi Shrimp, Loya, who was sitting cross-legged on the sofa with a phone bug, thought silently. Then, he gave Jones an order. I don't care about the rest, just stare at that civet cat. If it's in danger, you can show up directly to save it, understand? Tan, civet cat. Jones thought he had heard it wrong. Aren't we here for Drake? What about the civet cat? You're going to go on strike for messing with me like this? Ignoring Jones' surprise, Loya directly perfunctory. Don't worry about it so much, just do as I say. Well, you are the boss, you have the final say. Jones flipped the Byakugan helplessly, hung up the communication, and continued to pick up the binoculars and stare at the hut. Inside, the civet cat was holding a plate and placed it on the table, while chatting with Drake from time to time. Talking civet cats are indeed rare. Is it because of this? Suddenly, Jones saw the old woman standing by the window looking at him and smiled faintly. What? Jones immediately distanced himself and rubbed his eyes. But look at it again, the other party has turned his head and returned to the table to prepare for dinner. Feeling the sweat dripping from his forehead, Jones muttered to himself, is that an illusion? Chapter 258 Dalton Island. In the underground of the Drum King's palace, in that towering mountain, there is a prison. It was the only prison in the Drum Country, and now, Dalton, the former captain of the Drum Country Guard, who was able to use the animal system, was imprisoned here. Since the day that Dr. Silk drank the wine with the bomb in front of Valbo and died of a fatal accident, he stopped Chopper and let him go. He has been imprisoned by Valbo in this prison. Following the cold and damp passage, Jason Chromolyman walked all the way, and soon stopped in front of a cell. Dalton, Lord Valbo wants to see you. Hearing this familiar voice, in the cell, Dalton, who was covered in scars, raised his head, looked at the two Valbo subordinates who were helping Joe, and spat in disdain. Bah, see me. Why does that bastard Valbo want to see me? Bastard. How dare you call Lord Valbo's name? It seems that the years of prison life have not taught you to be loyal to Kunkin, Dalton, you traitor to the Drum Kingdom. Chromolyman shouted angrily, tore off a ball of static-filled hair from his head, and threw it at Dalton. Crackling. The electric current flickered in the dark, making Dalton unable to stop lying on the dirty floor. But even though the pain was excruciating, Dalton's eyes still showed no signs of timidity. Traitor. It was Valbo who really betrayed this country. Look at the current drum country, how can she still look half the way she used to be? Dalton has always been the one who has been tormented by Valbo's dictatorship. He is the most loyal guard of the Drum Nation, but the funny thing is that because of his loyalty, he arrested so many doctors with his own hands, and in disguise he became the promoter of the destruction of the Drum Nation. In the past few years in prison, he also figured it out. Although the real criminal in this country is Valbo, he is also a murderer. If there is a chance, he does not mind giving up his life to make up for his sins. It's no use talking hard, Dalton. Crackling. What a stubborn guy. After teaching Dalton, Chromolyman shook his hand and ordered his entourage to open the cell door and bring out Dalton, who had collapsed on the ground. When he came to the palace on the ground, Dalton was thrown heavily on the ground. It was already dark, but the palace was brightly lit, and not a single corner was dark. It's been a long time since he saw the light, and Dalton can't open his eyes now, but even if his vision is blurred, he still recognizes the fat figure. Valbo. Suddenly, Dalton suddenly got up from the ground, the whole person turned into a black bison, and rushed towards Valbo. Lord Valbo. The attack came so suddenly, Chromolyman and Jace didn't expect Dalton to attack at all, and suddenly exclaimed. But Valbo didn't panic. Looking at the sturdy bison rushing towards him, he opened his mouth and aimed at Dalton, his tongue turned into a cannon. The lead of the cannon had been ignited and was about to be fired. Next moment. Boom. Accompanied by the sound of the cannon, the buffalo that was charging forward suddenly screamed and flew straight out. HMPH, dare to attack the king, Dalton, do you really want to die? His chest was charred black, and Dalton, who was disenchanted, coughed up a pool of blood and stared at Valbo angrily. I will never admit it, you are my king. Whether you admit it or not, it is a fact that Lord Valbo is the king of this country. Chromolyman came to Dalton and picked him up. Now, your king has something for you to do. With Loya's order, Jones tonight is going to stay up all night to monitor his target. Well, spying on a talking civet cat was an interesting experience. In the vicinity of this East Island, the temperature is cold, and the island turtle, which has been swimming for a day, falls into a hibernation-like state as early as the sun goes down. There was a fireplace in the house, so Jones would not have to keep the vigil while feeling the cold. But this feeling similar to blowing the air conditioner to cover the quilt made him even more drowsy. Probably in the second half of the night, a bright light suddenly flashed through his eyes, causing him to open them suddenly. It was a pair of feline eyes that allowed Jones to see clearly what was happening on the dark sea in the dark. Huh, it's so late, is there anyone who doesn't sleep? The introduction of the island tortoise has brought great shock to the people of the Drum Kingdom. However, because it is a legendary island of cannibals, with a fierce reputation, those ordinary people do not have the courage to go to the island to check the situation. They usually go home early, turn off the lights, and open their eyes to wait for the development of the situation. And now it is possible to go to sea, only the army sent by the leader of this country. Jones had seen too many of this, and during his voyage, many countries approached by island turtles did so. However, Jones said that he liked it. Compared with the rabble pirates, he felt that these well-trained kingdom soldiers were better to use, and they were very good at work. The various defense measures, artillery and other things installed around the island turtle are all built by the pirates, but they can't do it to the current level. However, since you dare to approach, I'm sorry. Jones narrowed his eyes slightly and activated his fruit ability. Woo-woo, tot. There was a series of low growls in Jones' throat. The sound was not very loud, but the low frequency was strong and penetrating. In almost a few breaths, it spread to every corner of Turtle Island. Hold head high. This was the response from the island turtle under his ass, expressing his dissatisfaction while he knew it. As a cold-blooded animal, the weather in the magnetic drum country is perfect for the island turtle to sleep, and now that Jones wakes it up, it is normal to get up a little bit. It's done, then it's up to your performance. Dr. 20 is worthy of being a famous doctor left by Valbo alone, and each of them is quite skilled in medicine. Dalton's serious injury only took a short period of time, and after treatment, it no longer affected his movement. At this moment, Dalton was carrying a large sword on his back, and with the help of the monitors arranged by Valbo, he took a small boat and slowly approached the legendary Cannibal Island. It was his original intention to come here to investigate. It's not that he was greedy for life and feared death, and succumbed to Valbo's lewd power. But the current target of this Cannibal Island is obviously the Drum Kingdom. If the other party hits the Drum Kingdom, he can't stand Valbo, and he can't sit back and watch the civilian casualties. So here he is. Halfway through the rowing of the boat, the king's escort who was watching part-time rowing by the way released the oars and neatly changed into a life jacket. Dalton, go on your own way. I'm going back. The king is like that. How can you expect the soldiers under him to be better? In Valbo's view, it doesn't matter whether Dalton can bring back news or not, he has subordinates anyway, so apart from them, there is no third person to monitor. After speaking, the guard jumped into the sea, and swam to the shore. Dalton ignored the escaping guy. He picked up the oars from the boat and slowly rowed towards the island. At this moment, a deafening low roar came from the direction of Cannibal Island. Hold head high. The sea was swayed by low waves, causing Dalton's boat to rock up and down unstoppable. Have you found me? Dalton's eyes narrowed and he accelerated his rowing speed. Chapter 259 Uninhabited Island. It's a very quiet island. This is the most intuitive feeling after Dalton landed on the island. Even in the Drum Country where the 4 seasons snow, the forest at night should not be so quiet. Not to mention the predators that should appear at night, not even the chirping of insects and birds. What Dalton didn't know was that it was an order from Jones, the boss of Turtle Island in every sense. Conquering the island turtle not only allowed Jones to complete Loya's mission, but also found a pirate ship that was not seasick. Even more so, Jones, the beast language fruit person, became the real king of Turtle Island. He told all creatures to shut up and keep quiet, so few guys dared to disobey his orders. As for the living people on the island, Jones has long since moved to the hinterland of Turtle Island. With people guarding, no one can escape Jones's eyes. Crossing the reef flats off the coast, Dalton quickly found traces that only human activity would leave behind. It was a winding path paved with slate. From the direction of landing on the island, it was a simple small port. The legendary man-eating island, was it inhabited before? Looking up at the silent building complex in the distance, Dalton took out the strangely shaped door panel sword on his back, held it tightly, and touched the front along the path. Soon, a dilapidated small fishing village appeared in front of him. The houses here are strange, every one of them has been demolished in half. From the wall less than 1 meter high, you can still see the table and bed in the room. The reason why it was judged to be demolished, not destroyed. That's because around the house, the bricks and stones that were torn down are still neatly stacked there. Several burdens were randomly placed beside the masonry, and under the moonlight, the curved ropes were like poisonous snakes hidden in the dark. Has the group moved out? It looks like it has been a while. Dalton walked to the door of a roofless house and glanced at the dusty floor. When he came to the house, he reached out and picked up the bread on the table. A pinch. It's not too long. Looking at the still soft bread in his hands, Dalton fell into deep terror. Judging by the dust accumulated on the ground, the people here should have left a few months ago. But why is the bread still soft? You must know that this kind of standing food in a commoner's home will become as hard as a stone in just one day if it is placed in a ventilated place. The kind that can't be swallowed without soaking it in water. Here, there are people. Dalton is not afraid of ghosts and ghosts. Although he doesn't know why there are no footprints around, his intuition tells him that this piece of bread was placed here on purpose. Holding the big sword, Dalton looked at the wall of the house vigilantly, and then took a small step back. It has to be said that Ratchet is worthy of his self-proclaimed genius. As one of the former Dark World giants and a well-known trap master, Jones said that he had never seen a storm, but he couldn't help expressing his convincing for Ratchet's design. Just like the trap that Dalton is stepping on now, even Jones couldn't detect any danger before it was launched. Not that it's really not dangerous, it's a fake trap. But because no matter which angle you stand in, this trap will not trigger, it is absolutely safe. But if you want to leave, especially when turning and stepping back, the induction device installed under the floor will be activated immediately. Just like now. Boom. Bang. Almost as soon as Dalton stepped back, sharp spears suddenly rose from under the floor of the room and surrounded him in the middle of the room. The purpose of these spears is not to kill the enemy, but to drive the enemy back to the center of the trap. Generally speaking, few people will continue to retreat when a spear appears behind them. Dalton was naturally not in this list. At the moment when the spear appeared, he jumped forward abruptly, avoiding the possibility of being penetrated by the spear. Then, before he had time to look around, Dalton fell directly under his feet. Ratchet's design is very perfect. Not only the edge of the trap is made into a smooth arc. Those spears also have a three-folded structure. If you want to lie on the edge or grab the spear at the moment when the trap is activated, the ending is self-evident. Ah! Dalton accidentally rubbed hard on the wall of the passage during the fall, and was cut off by those sharp barbs, and he screamed. But his cry didn't last long, and soon, with a thud, he fell into the bottom of the sea. What? It's done so quickly. Jones raised the owl in his hand, shocked by the news the other party brought back. From when that guy landed on the island to when he fell into a trap and was captured, it was only 5 minutes before and after, right? It also includes the time he spends dawdling suspiciously on the fringe trail. I thought that the king of this country would send some kind of expert to dare to let him come here alone, but he was such a rookie. Jones expressed helplessness. Gang Ying was sent out by him, and he is still guarding the only passage to the island. As a result, it's a little embarrassing, isn't it? However, recalling the unfathomable old woman he saw in the evening, Jones' eyes suddenly became strange. This island seems to be more interesting than I thought. However, since everyone has been caught, let's go and interrogate it. Thinking of this, the skin on Jones' body was rippling like the surface of water, and circles of fingernail-sized lines quickly emerged, then solidified and turned black. Wrapping himself in the scales of the black king snake, Jones stared at the vertical pupils like a cold-blooded animal, and CC spit out snake letters. Then no one will recognize me, will it? Looking down at the sharp cat-like nails on his hands, Jones smiled confidently. Well, I almost don't recognize what I am now. In the past 6 months, Jones has not been honestly hiding on Turtle Island. In addition to managing the residents of the original Mechanic Island and the captured pirates and navy, he has been working hard to improve his strength all the time. This deformation of the fusion of various animal forms is the result of his past 6 months. Except for Zephyr, no one has seen Jones's true face. During the day, when he calls his subordinates, Jones sees people in the form of a black king snake, and at night, All animals on this island are his subordinates. Led by a 1-meter-8 gorilla, Jones soon came to the prison below the mechanical castle and saw Dalton, who was soaked in the sea. This is the prison that was transformed from the garbage collection that once pitted Luffy and the others. Except that sea water can still be poured over the head, and the walls of the cell can be turned over, the structure inside has been strengthened and transformed. Because the sea was soaking, Jones, who was completely weak, raised his head and looked in the direction of the footsteps. His eyes suddenly widened. Is it really an uninhabited island? Chapter 260. The Navy is here again. Everyone hurry up and hide. Cannibal Island. Cannibal Island. Since humans are used as food, then if there are really humans on the island, they should also exist in the form of food. This thoughtful speculation was recognized by Dalton as a reality when he saw the transformed Jones. He even said that he also made up an annual large-scale sci-fi suspense horror inspirational TV series in which an evil cannibal hides on an isolated island, devours all human beings who dare to approach, and devotes himself to developing forces, hoping to one day replace human beings to rule the world. If it weren't for the fiery pain of the wound on his back tearing off a piece of flesh from a barb, which distracted him, this TV series might even have compiled the scenes of the second season of human beings and overthrowing the rule of cannibals. Jones had no interest in correcting Dalton's words, and even said that he would rather see such a scene happen. Since you can't even recognize me as a human being, how could you possibly guess the identity of Hunter Jones, the giant of the dark world? Although looking at the strength of the other party, Jones does not think that such people can recognize himself who has been hidden in the dark in the past. Standing quietly in front of Dalton, Jones' pair of vertical pupils kept looking up and down on him, as if he was thinking about making a move from there. In this creepy picture, the tinge of purple in the center of the vertical pupil brought a mysterious atmosphere to Jones. This is the eye of the Black King Snake. Jones had more options to strengthen his eyesight and adapt to a variety of environments. But for some unspeakable reason, he kept this pair of vertical pupils that impressed him. Say what you're here for, human. Jones asked hoarsely after seeing Dalton uneasy. So you can talk too, Dalton said in surprise. He couldn't help thinking of Chopper. If the other party was not a special type, he should have eaten some devil fruit like Chopper. The reason why he doesn't think that the other party is a human being is actually the most important reason. Human beings have a sense of shame, and they are open and magnanimous in public. Only animals can do this, such as Chopper. Strike hard, dare not write. In fact, Dalton wanted to fork on this point. You must know that Jones lived in the forest all year round, and he had a piece of animal skin on his body to cover important parts. The reason for this is to avoid dust and muddy water, allowing bacteria to grow and affect health. For Jones, magnanimity is his favorite look. However, isn't this kind of coincidence born out of it? Since the other party can speak, it means that everything has been discussed. Dalton leaned barely against the rim of the bucket, correcting his attitude. I'm the former captain of the Drum Kingdom's Palace Guard, Dalton. Excuse me, sir, what are you doing in the Drum Kingdom? Dalton went straight to the subject as soon as he came up. Whether he could go back or not, he had to figure out the other party's purpose. Drum Country. Jones rolled his eyes slightly and remembered something. There was a doctor who defected to him many years ago on the 110th branch of the Navy in the former island of Crisvia. The other party's medical skills are not bad. I heard that he is from the Drum Country. On the way here, he was familiar with the name of this island. When he heard the name of this country, his long-term memory immediately became clear. Is it the medical power? It's really good luck. As a pirate ship, or should be a pirate ship, the problem of not having a ship doctor has long been placed in front of Jones, who is the self-proclaimed deputy captain. The Mechanic Island used to be just an island far away from people and isolated from the world. Even the pirates had to see it every few years, so naturally there would not be any smart doctors. Now that he has come to the country of magnetic drums, a big medical country, Jones has made up his mind that even if he is tied, he must tie a few doctors back. Thinking of this, he stared at Dalton, and the aura unique to the strong man was released arrogantly. You don't deserve to ask me questions, Ants. Now tell me, where is the best doctor on the island? As for whether Dalton would wonder if he knew the name of the Drum Nation, Jones said that since you are on the island, don't think about going back. The next day, the Drum Country ushered in a sunny day after a long absence. The warm sunshine shone on the snow, making the tormented residents of the Drum Country uncontrollably relaxed a little, and started a new life in a dawdling manner. No matter what the fabled man-eating island is going to do, they and their families need to eat. Even if you die, you can't be a starving ghost. However, this situation is only a minority after all. Most residents have more or less prepared some food at home, so that they can stay at home and wait for the development of things. So, when Kurha led Drake to the market in Geistar Town, what he saw was an empty, lonely scene that even the stray dogs could not see. Hey, although there have been speculations for a long time, but seeing this scene, I still think it's too much. Derek complained with a sigh while clutching his empty stomach. A Kurha who was drinking to satisfy his hunger, and a cute Chopper, the two of them must not have much food at home. Now with the two mouths of Drake and more, Drake is still the big eater of the animal system, and the food in Kurha's family was wiped out in just one meal. From morning to now, Drake had only eaten a piece of bread and had to go to the market with Kurha to buy vegetables. Which is actually not as mysterious as ordinary people imagine. She is also human and needs to eat. And the high medical fees she charges for each treatment, apart from buying alcohol, the rest of the living expenses are actually not much. Gollum. Even if she was hungry, Kurha, who had to keep the wine in her hands, took a sip and said, since everyone is staying at home, there's nothing we can do. Let's go, I'll take you to the Overlord meal. Bawang meal. Drake didn't come back to his senses for a while. CO authoring with you, do you still have this hobby? Facing Drake's strange look, Kurha smiled slightly. Someone owes me 100,000 Bailey's medical bills. If they don't have money, they can only use food money instead. Drake. 100,000 Bailey, how did you do it? How did you do it? Kuleha instead looked at Drake strangely. I'm a doctor, either you don't want your life or you don't want the money, how did you say I did it? Derek was speechless for a while, and could only stare at Kurha in a daze. At this moment, a figure suddenly ran across the street outside the market, shouting loudly while running, the Navy is here again. Everyone hurry up. The Navy is here again, everyone hurry up and hide. Hearing the harsh, again, Kurha stopped drinking and looked at Drake with a smile. I'd like to ask now, how did you do it?